The great golden eye of the sun began its slow, deliberate descent, its final gaze painting the celestial canvas in a breathtaking wash of lavender and tangerine. A profound silence fell, not empty, but full of anticipation, as the vibrant energy of the day softened into the hushed whispers of evening. In the heart of the zodiac meadow, where starlight took root and dreams blossomed like nocturnal flowers, the air itself seemed to hold its breath. A gentle, cooling breeze, scented with jasmine and damp earth, stirred the long grasses, its murmur a secret language understood only by the 12 who called this place home. One by one, the first stars pierced the deepening violet, tiny pinpricks of diamond light heralding the coming grandeur of the night. They shimmered with a cold, pure fire, distant, yet intimately connected to the slumbering earth below. Then, with a grace that belied its immense size, the moon began its ascent. It crested the distant, darkening hills, a colossal pearl whose soft, silver glow spilled across the meadow, transforming every dewdrop into a fallen star and every leaf into a sliver of polished obsidian. This luminous tide washed over the familiar forms of the 12 zodiac signs, who were beginning to feel the ancient, irresistible pull of sleep. A collective, languid yawn seemed to pass through them, a wave of weariness that was not burdensome but welcome. It was the signal, the unspoken agreement that their journey to Dreamland was about to commence. The ram's fiery spirit banked its coals, the bull's sturdy frame relaxed into the yielding earth, and the twins' ceaseless chatter softened to a murmur. The crab drew a little closer to the heart of the gathering, the lion's proud mane seemed to settle, and the maiden's keen eyes grew heavy-lidded. The scales sought their center, the scorpion stilled its intense contemplation, the archer lowered his boundless gaze, the sea-goat felt the weight of ambition lift, the water-bearer's inventive mind began to drift, and the fishes already seemed to swim in the currents of approaching dreams. The transition was complete. The day, with all its noise and motion, had been lovingly tucked away. In its place, the night unfolded its velvet wings, offering the profound peace that only darkness can bring. A serene and magical stillness settled upon the zodiac meadow, a sacred space where the only thing left to do was to close one's eyes and be carried away on the gentle, inexorable current of sleep. In the heart of the meadow, nestled within a ring of ancient, silver-barked trees, the 12 signs gathered in their cozy clearing. The moon's glow, filtered through the canopy, dappled the soft moss underfoot, creating a sanctuary of shifting light and shadow. The air was warm with the shared breath of their community, a tangible harmony that hummed just below the threshold of sound. They had come together, as they did every evening, to share the final moments of wakefulness, their collective energy a tapestry woven from the day's many threads. Aries, the ram, practically vibrated with residual vigor, his hooves tapping a restless rhythm against a tree root. He burst forth with the tale of his day, a whirlwind narrative of racing through sun-drenched fields and leading triumphant, imaginary charges against armies of thistles. His energy was a spark seeking kindling, and he soon proposed a grand, energetic game to cap off the evening, his eyes alight with the challenge. But before the idea could take flight, Libra, her form balanced and serene, gently raised a hand. Her presence was a calming weight, a reminder of the scales she embodied. With a soft smile that held the wisdom of equilibrium, she suggested that perhaps the greatest game tonight was the one of finding peace, of quieting their hearts for the shared journey ahead. Her words settled over the group like a soft blanket, and Aries, though still buzzing, gave a conceding nod. Around them, the others settled into their natural states, a living portrait of the zodiac's diversity. Taurus the bull had already claimed the plushest cushion, his sturdy body sinking into it with a contented sigh as he snuggled a velvet pillow against his cheek. his entire being focused on the pursuit of pure, unadulterated comfort. Nearby, Gemini chatted amiably, a single entity with two distinct voices weaving in and out of a conversation about cloud shapes and whispered secrets, a testament to their dual nature. Cancer the crab, her soft shell gleaming, moved between her friends, offering a kind word here, a reassuring pat there, her nurturing instinct ensuring no one felt overlooked. Leo the lion stood a little apart, practicing the cadence of a silent, regal speech, his head held high as if addressing a court of stars. Virgo the maiden was already at work, meticulously folding and refolding blankets, aligning their edges with mathematical precision, her need for order bringing a quiet structure to the space. Scorpio remained in the deepest shadows, his intense gaze turned inward, reflecting on the hidden currents of the day with a profound and silent depth. Sagittarius, the archer lounged with an adventure book splayed open, his spirit already journeying to far-off lands described on the page, while Capricorn the sea-goat reviewed a mental list of goals, his brow furrowed in thoughtful preparation for the day to come. Aquarius the water-bearer gazed at the constellations, his mind a whirlwind of new ideas and cosmic theories, his fingers twitching as if sketching blueprints in the air. And Pisces the fishes simply floated on the periphery, her large, luminous eyes gazing dreamily at the moon, her spirit already half submerged in the gentle waters of the coming dreamscape. A collective understanding passed through them, a silent agreement woven from starlight and shared purpose. Libra's call for harmony had been heard. The time for stories and games was gently set aside. Now was the moment to turn inward, to begin the sacred, individual rituals that would guide each unique spirit from the waking world into the united realm of dreams. Together, yet alone in their preparations, they embraced the quiet, ready to embark on the most important voyage of the night. The memory of the day's adventures still thrummed through Aries' sturdy frame, a current of pure, unspent energy that made the very idea of stillness feel like a cage. While the other signs had softened into the evening's tranquility, the ram's heart beat a fierce, rapid tattoo against his ribs, a drum summoning him back to the sunlit fields. Behind his closed eyelids, he was not in a quiet meadow, but charging across vast, open plains, his powerful legs a blur of motion. He recalled the exhilarating rush of wind against his face, the thunder of his own hooves against the earth, the glorious sensation of leading an imaginary legion of brave warriors against the towering, purple-headed thistles. He had been a general, a pioneer, a force of unstoppable momentum, and the ghost of that glorious leadership still clung to his curled horns. A restless shudder ran from the tip of his nose to the end of his tufted tail. Lying down was impossible. With a sudden, explosive movement, he sprang to his feet, the soft moss yielding beneath his hooves. The peaceful clearing felt suddenly confining. He began to pace, a tight, agitated circuit around his chosen sleeping spot, his breath puffing in quick, white clouds in the cool air. The need for action, for a final, victorious skirmish before surrender, was overwhelming. Abandoning his pacing, he dropped into a low crouch, his weight shifting from one hoof to the other. He began to shadowbox, his head lowered, his horns slicing through the air in swift, practiced arcs. He feinted and dodged, weaving against an invisible opponent, each jab and thrust a silent testament to the battle still raging within him. It was then that a beam of moonlight, pure and silvery, found him. It fell across his tense shoulders not as a reprimand, but as a gentle, cooling hand. He paused, his sides heaving, and looked up. The moon hung full and serene in the vast expanse of sky, its calm, watchful gaze a stark contrast to his own frantic energy. It did not command him to stop, but rather seemed to suggest a different kind of challenge, a more difficult conquest than any he had faced in the fields. The challenge of stillness, the battle for peace. A new idea, born from that lunar silence, sparked in his mind. A true leader knew when to charge and when to stand firm. A real adventure required preparation. His boldness did not have to be extinguished. It could be transformed. He would not fight sleep. He would conquer it. He would create a bedtime challenge for himself, a final, purposeful mission to channel his fiery spirit into the peaceful preparation for the journey ahead. The relentless energy that had driven him all day now pivoted, its fierce focus turning inward, seeking not a foe to vanquish, but a fortress of calm to build within himself. The first and most daring charge of the night was about to begin, and the battlefield was his own restless soul. With the moon's challenge accepted, Ares's restless energy found a new, purposeful outlet. His shadowboxing ceased, the phantom opponent dismissed, and his focus narrowed to the patch of moss that would become his camp for the night. This was no longer a place of confinement, but a command post. He began his ritual with the strategic precision of a general fortifying a position. His woolly blanket, a soft crimson, was not merely laid out, but strategically draped and tucked, its corners anchored with smooth, heavy stones to form protective ramparts. His pillow became a watchtower, plumped and positioned for optimal vigilance. He arranged a few fallen branches and a cluster of fragrant lavender sprigs at the entrance, a symbolic gate that marked the boundary between the day's battles and the night's peace. The simple act of building this cozy fortress began to transmute his chaotic energy into a steady, determined concentration. Satisfied with his defensive preparations, he turned to his supplies. From a small, leather-wrapped canteen, he poured steaming water over a handful of fresh mint leaves. The sharp, clean scent rose in an invigorating cloud, instantly transporting him to the crisp, thin air of high mountain passes where he had raced the winds earlier that day. He cupped the warm clay mug in his hooves, the heat seeping into his bones, and took a slow, deliberate sip. The tea was not a sedative, but a potion of remembrance, a liquid echo of the freedom he so cherished. Each swallow was a conscious release, a letting go of the day's frantic pace and a welcoming of the night's steady rhythm. The warmth spread through his chest, a comforting campfire built within. Then came the most critical part of his self-imposed challenge, counting sheep. For any other, it might be a dull exercise in monotony. For Ares, it was a military parade. He closed his eyes, and behind his lids, a majestic gate swung open. Through it marched not docile, fluffy creatures, but an army of proud, woolly warriors. Their fleece was polished armor, their horns were gleaming spears, and their eyes held the same fiery glint as his own. They did not leap lazily over a fence. They marched in perfect, disciplined ranks, their hooves falling in a soft, rhythmic cadence that was both powerful and soothing. As each battalion passed the gate, the warrior sheep would lower their weapons, their fierce expressions softening into ones of weary contentment. They would find their own little patches of dream moss, lie down, and let out peaceful, synchronized sighs. He was not counting them to sleep. He was commanding them to stand down, leading his own inner army into a state of tranquil repose. As the last of the brave, woolly soldiers settled, a profound shift occurred within him. The frantic drumbeat of his heart slowed to a steady, marching rhythm. The electric buzz in his muscles faded, replaced by a warm, heavy languor. His bold, explosive energy had not been defeated, but masterfully channeled, transformed into a focused and powerful calm. It was in this newfound stillness that he became aware of a quiet, steady presence nearby. Taurus had been observing the entire ritual from his nest of pillows, his dark eyes reflecting a deep understanding. He saw not a restless child, but a commander successfully completing a difficult maneuver. As Aries opened his eyes, the final vestiges of his tension melting away, Taurus caught his gaze. The bull did not speak with words, but offered a slow, deliberate blink, a gesture of such profound and simple comfort that it carried more weight than any speech. It was a silent acknowledgement, a shared moment of peace between the bold pioneer and the steadfast guardian. In that quiet exchange, Ares felt the last of his resistance dissolve. His fortress was built, his troops were at rest, and an ally stood watch. The battlefield of his soul was finally, peacefully won. With the comforting blink from Taurus as his final benediction, Ares lowered his head onto his pillow watchtower. The fortress of his bedding now felt less like a strategic encampment and more like a soft, welcoming harbor. The tension that had corded his muscles and set his mind racing finally unspooled, leaving behind a deep, heavy warmth. His breathing, once a series of sharp, excited puffs, began to slow and deepen, each inhale a long, steady draft of cool night air, each exhale a release of the day's final embers. The very rhythm of his lungs became a lulling mantra, guiding him away from the shores of wakefulness. As his consciousness softened at the edges, the dreamscape began to rise to meet him. It was not the wild, sun-drenched plains of his waking adventures, but a new and wondrous territory, a kingdom of clouds. He was leading an expedition once more, but this time his charge was one of pure peace. He marched at the head of a silent, serene procession through valleys of pillowy cumulus, their surfaces yielding like fresh snow under his hooves. Where once he would have encountered thorny brambles and steep cliffs, he now found gentle, rolling slopes that invited him to climb. Obstacles were no longer challenges to be conquered, but soft, welcoming formations. A towering thunderhead became a grand, spongy staircase, its steps easing his ascent. A deep chasm between clouds was bridged by a span of shimmering, weightless mist. Every potential hardship in this dream had been disarmed, transformed into an element of comfort and ease. His leadership was no longer about force, but about guiding his dream self and his phantom followers through a landscape designed for tranquility. The inherent fire of his sign, which had burned so fiercely just moments before, was now soothed by the profound coolness of the night. The gentle breeze that whispered through the meadow seemed to seep into his dreams, a refreshing balm that tempered his inner heat without extinguishing his spirit. It was a perfect equilibrium, the passionate heart of the ram cradled in the cool, silver palm of the night. His bold beginning was finding its gentle conclusion not in an ending, but in a beautiful transformation. His body grew heavier, sinking into the moss as if it were the very cloudscape of his dreams. The conscious world dissolved into a haze of silver and soft white. And then, from deep within his chest, came the first soft, rumbling snore. It was not a loud or jarring sound, but a resonant, steady drumbeat, a far gentler echo of the fierce heart that had pounded out a war rhythm earlier. This drumbeat was the signal, the final, triumphant fanfare announcing that the leader had successfully completed his most important mission. Ares, the bold pioneer, had crossed the final frontier into sleep, his spirit leading a peaceful expedition through the endless, welcoming skies of his dreams. For Taurus, the bull, true contentment was not a fleeting emotion, but a tangible, physical state to be meticulously constructed. As the final echoes of Ares's energetic ritual faded into the night, Taurus's own bedtime ceremony began, not with a charge, but with a slow, deliberate survey of his domain. His sleeping area was a sanctuary of sensation, a carefully curated collection of textures and comforts designed to please his deeply sensual and grounded nature. His dark, liquid eyes moved with a proprietor's pride over the plush velvet pillows, the thick woolen blankets, and the soft fleece throws that formed his nest. This was his fortress of coziness, and every element within it had to be just so. He began with the pillows. A lesser creature might have simply plopped down, but for Taurus, the act of fluffing was a sacred ritual. He lifted each one, his broad, solid hooves surprisingly gentle as they needed, and pummeled the downy filling, coaxing it back to its fullest, most buoyant potential. He pressed his face into the cool, smooth velvet of one, inhaling its faint, clean scent, then turned it over to feel the contrasting nubby texture of the reverse side. Each pillow was then placed with intention, not just for support, but for aesthetic harmony and tactile variety, one for his head, one to snuggle against his chest, and two more flanking his sides to create a sense of secure, cushioned embrace. Next came the blankets. He unfolded a cashmere throw, his hooves savoring the impossibly soft whisper of the fabric. He then layered it with a heavier, woven wool blanket, its weight a profound comfort to his sturdy frame. He meticulously smoothed out every wrinkle, his movements slow and methodical, ensuring there were no lumps or awkward folds to disrupt the perfect plane of comfort. As he worked, his mind drifted back through the simple, profound pleasures of the day. He recalled the rich, dark taste of the clover he had grazed upon at noon, the warm, solid feel of the sun-baked earth beneath his belly as he napped, and the satisfying crunch of a ripe apple gifted by Cancer. These memories were not grand adventures, but they filled him with a deep, resonant sense of well-being. He felt a profound contentment, a harmony with the world that was as solid and real as the ground beneath his feet. Yet this contentment did not lead to complacency. It fueled his desire for perfection. He was not merely preparing for sleep, he was curating an experience. He adjusted the corner of a blanket by a fraction of an inch. He swapped out one pillow for another that offered a slightly more pleasing firmness. He wanted everything just right. This was the essence of his being, a creature who found his highest joy not in the chase, but in the full, rich savoring of the moment. His entire world had narrowed to this small, perfect circle of luxury, and he would not rest until every thread, every fiber, was aligned to create the ultimate sensory haven. The night was an invitation to indulge, and Taurus, the great bull of the zodiac, was preparing to accept it with all the deliberate, sensual grace he possessed. With his nest of pillows and blankets arranged to perfection, Taurus turned his attention to the final, most sacred element of his ritual, the preparation of his bedtime drink. From a small, lidded pot, kept warm by the residual heat of a sun-warmed stone, he poured a generous measure of milk into a heavy ceramic mug. The milk was not merely warm. It was heated to that precise temperature where it released its rich, creamy scent without forming a skin, a testament to his patient vigilance. Into this creamy pool, he drizzled a thick stream of golden honey, harvested from bees that buzzed among the meadow's clover. He stirred slowly, the wooden spoon moving in a deliberate, clockwise circle, watching the honey spiral and dissolve until the milk was transformed into a sweet, opalescent nectar. He lifted the mug in both hooves, its solid weight and the warmth radiating through the ceramic already a profound comfort. He did not drink it quickly. This was an act of meditation. He brought the rim to his lips and took a small, savoring sip. The flavor bloomed on his tongue, first the deep, comforting richness of the milk, then the bright, floral sweetness of the honey, a taste of sunlight and pollen preserved. He held it in his mouth for a moment, allowing the warmth to spread, before swallowing, feeling the soothing liquid trace a path of warmth all the way to his core. Each subsequent sip was the same, a slow, deliberate ceremony of taste and temperature, a liquid manifestation of the comfort he so deeply craved. As he drank, he opened his other senses to the symphony of the night. The crickets had begun their evensong, a rhythmic, chirping chorus that pulsed through the darkness. Instead of finding it a distraction, Taurus tuned his breathing to its rhythm, the steady in and out of his breath becoming a deep, resonant counterpoint to the insect's higher-pitched melody. He pressed one hoof flat against the cool, damp earth, feeling its ancient, unshakable solidity. Through the soil, he could sense the slow, patient heartbeat of the world, a vibration of stability that traveled up his leg and settled his own spirit. The warmth of the drink within and the steady rhythm of the earth without created a perfect, harmonious balance. He was a creature of the soil, and in this moment he felt utterly connected, grounded, and at peace. His quiet contentment did not go unnoticed. Cancer, having finished her own gentle rounds of the clearing, felt the pull of his serene energy. She approached his cozy nest not with words, but with a soft, understanding presence. Taurus, sensing her, looked up from his mug, his dark eyes reflecting the moonlight. Without a sound, he lifted a corner of his heaviest wool blanket, an invitation as clear and warm as his honeyed milk. Cancer accepted, slipping beneath the weighty fabric and settling beside his sturdy, warm bulk. She rested her head gently against his shoulder, and he adjusted his position minutely to better support her. This was a comfort that went beyond the physical. The shared warmth, the weight of the blanket, the silent, nurturing companionship. It was a connection that fed his soul as deeply as the honeyed milk fed his body. He took one final, slow sip, the last of the warmth spreading through him, and set the empty mug aside. The sensory pleasures of taste and touch were now complete, woven together with the sounds of the night and the comfort of a friend. His desire for coziness was not a selfish one. It was a need to create a haven, a pocket of perfect peace that he was now happily sharing. The ritual had reached its zenith, a perfect moment of sensory comfort and quiet connection, preparing him for the final surrender to the dreams that awaited. With the empty mug set aside and the comforting weight of Cancer resting against his side, Taurus felt the final barrier between wakefulness and sleep dissolve. The world, already softened by the perfection of his ritual, began to blur at the edges, its sharp lines melting into a warm, inviting haze. He gave one last, slow, contented blink, his heavy-lidded eyes closing as he surrendered to the gentle, inexorable pull. He nestled his head deeper into the velvet pillow, the fabric cool against his cheek, and allowed his sturdy body to sink completely into the luxurious embrace of his bedding. The careful arrangement of pillows and blankets now served its ultimate purpose, cradling him in a cocoon of absolute comfort. A profound, grounding weight settled over him, the pleasant heaviness of a body fully at peace, ready to be claimed by slumber. As the meadow faded from his awareness, a new landscape bloomed behind his eyelids, vivid and serene. He dreamed of a vast, sun-drenched meadow, even lusher and more tranquil than the one he had left behind. The grass was a deep, emerald green, thick and soft underfoot, and it stretched to a horizon of gently rolling hills. A warm, benevolent sun shone from a sky dotted with fluffy, slow-moving clouds, its light golden and soothing. Then a gentle rain began to fall, not a storm, but a soft, misty shower that pattered a soothing rhythm on the broad leaves of dream clover. Each drop released the rich, loamy scent of wet earth, a fragrance that spoke to the very core of his being. He could feel the cool kiss of the rain on his back and taste the clean, fresh water on his tongue. In this dream, every one of his senses was filled to overflowing with peace. There was no striving, no need for perfection, only the pure, unadulterated joy of simply being in a world designed for his comfort. Back in the waking world, his physical form gave the final signals of his surrender. His breathing deepened into a slow, steady rhythm, each exhale a long, soft sigh of pure contentment. And then the first snore escaped, a low, resonant rumble that rose from the depths of his chest. It was not a jarring sound, but a soft, rhythmic vibration, like the steady, comforting purr of the earth itself. It rose and fell in a gentle cadence, a lullaby composed of his own deep peace, a sound that seemed to promise stability and safety to anyone who heard it. It was the audible expression of his soul, completely at rest. There was no struggle, no final conscious thought. Taurus, the great bull of comfort, simply let go. The weight of sleep embraced him fully, pulling him down into the lush, green depths of his dream meadow. His senses, so meticulously pleased in the waking world, were now immersed in a landscape of even greater serenity. He had sought coziness and found it, not just in his nest of blankets, but in the very fabric of his dreams. Fully, completely, and without reservation, Taurus surrendered to slumber, his soft, rhythmic snores a testament to a soul profoundly and perfectly at peace. Inside the single, shared form of Gemini, the day was far from over. While the bodies of their fellow signs grew heavy and still, the twins' minds were a whirlwind of overlapping thoughts, a vibrant, internal symposium that showed no signs of adjourning. Sleep was a distant, uninteresting shore, while the vast ocean of the day's unsolved mysteries and uncharted conversations beckoned with irresistible force. The quiet of the meadow was not a blanket of peace for them, but a canvas upon which their ceaseless curiosity painted 1,000 new questions. The rustle of a leaf was not just a sound, but the start of a debate on arboreal languages. The flicker of a firefly became a lecture on bioluminescence and cosmic signals. Two distinct streams of consciousness flowed within them, sometimes merging into a powerful river of shared insight, other times branching into separate, racing creeks of individual wonder. One mind replayed the afternoon's events with the precision of a historian, analyzing every gesture, every half-heard word from the other signs, searching for hidden meanings and unspoken connections. The other mind was already leaping ahead, speculating on the architecture of dreams, the philosophy of constellations, and the potential for inventing a language spoken entirely in size. They discussed these topics with themselves, a silent, rapid-fire exchange that was felt as a thrilling, internal vibration. A shared memory of Libra's gentle intervention sparked a parallel analysis of diplomacy versus directness. A glimpse of Sagittarius's adventure book led to a spirited, internal comparison of fictional journeys versus real ones. Their need to communicate, to dissect and understand their world was as fundamental as breathing, and it left no room for the passive state of sleep. Seeking a channel for this mental energy, they turned their attention to a small, cloth-wrapped bundle that served as their shared library. The idea of reading a book together felt perfect, a shared, quiet activity that would engage their minds and perhaps, eventually, lure them toward rest. But the moment the knot was untied and the 3 beloved volumes were revealed, their harmonious intention shattered into a delightful chaos of indecision. One mind was instantly drawn to a thick, leather-bound tome of celestial maps and star myths, its pages whispering promises of cosmic secrets and ancient stories written in light. The other mind championed a slim volume of witty, paradoxical poetry, its lines a playful labyrinth of meaning that begged to be unraveled and debated from 2 different angles. A silent, yet fervent, negotiation began. The stargazer argued for the grand scale, the epic narrative, the connection to the very night sky that watched over them. The poet-advocate countered with the beauty of the small, the power of the perfectly turned phrase, the intellectual puzzle that a good poem presented. They would reach for one book, only for an internal counter-argument to make them pause, their hand hovering in the air. They would almost settle on the poetry, then a glance at the twinkling Pleiades would cause a last-minute deflection back toward the star atlas. This was not frustration, but a kind of joyous paralysis, the delightful agony of having two equally wonderful paths to choose from and two separate wills to appease. Their communicative nature, their greatest strength, had become a perfect, self-contained loop of delightful indecision, showcasing a duality that was far too curious and engaged to simply close its eyes on the world. The delightful paralysis of choice could not last forever, not when the moon climbed higher and the collective breathing of the meadow deepened around them. A new idea sparked simultaneously within their shared consciousness, a perfect compromise born of their intrinsic duality. They would not read a story, they would tell one, or rather two. They carefully rewrapped their little library, setting the unresolved debate aside, and turned their full attention inward to the boundless repository of their own imagination. This was a ritual of creation, a way to channel their swirling thoughts into a structured shared experience that would honor both their need for connection and their hunger for mental stimulation. They settled back against a smooth-barked log, their posture relaxing as the focus shifted from external objects to the internal stage of their minds. The first story began, its narrative voice clear and bright, painting pictures against the dark canvas of their closed eyelids. It was a tale of the stars, not as distant balls of gas, but as a family of ancient, luminous beings who held nightly councils in the velvet dark. The storyteller described a mischievous young star who, bored with its fixed position, decided to weave a new constellation, tangling the silver threads of starlight and causing a delightful chaos that required the wise old moon to gently unravel. The details were rich and whimsical. The stars had voices like chiming crystals, and the Milky Way was a river of spilled moon milk. As the tale unfolded, a silent, internal laughter bubbled up. The other twin found the descriptions and the celestial puns irresistibly funny, and their shared amusement was a warm, vibrating hum that resonated through their single form. It was a story told not just to be heard, but to be enjoyed together. Then, seamlessly, the narrative baton was passed. The second story began, its tone shifting to something deeper, more rhythmic and fluid. This was a tale of the sea, a realm of endless mystery that perfectly suited the other twins' love for the profound and the unexplored. It spoke of a patient, old tide who had fallen in love with the distant moon, and whose endless, sighing advances and retreats were not the pull of gravity, but a lifelong, unspoken conversation. The storyteller wove in descriptions of bioluminescent cities in the abyss, of whales singing sagas in low, resonant frequencies, and of pearls that held captured moonlight within their smooth, hard hearts. This story, too, was punctuated by that same internal, joyful laughter, as the first twin delighted in the poetic turns of phrase and the clever personification of the oceanic elements. The magic of the ritual was not just in the telling, but in the profound, attentive listening. As one twin spun their narrative, the other was fully immersed, not as a critic, but as a captivated audience of one, their own racing thoughts momentarily stilled by the spell of the story. This act of sharing and receiving, of giving a part of one's inner world, and having it be truly heard and appreciated by the other, was a deeper connection than any spoken conversation could ever be. It was a mental dance, a meeting of two minds in a space of pure creativity. Slowly, imperceptibly at first, the frantic whirlwind of their thoughts began to settle. The chaotic symphony of questions and observations softened, its frantic tempo slowing to match the gentle rhythm of the stories. The laughter became less frequent, transforming into soft, internal sighs of contentment. The need for constant external stimulation was being satisfied from within. Their curious minds, so often pulled in two different directions, were finally finding a harmonious convergence in this shared, imaginative space. The ritual of storytelling was doing what no single book could. It was weaving their dual natures together, quieting the cacophony with a melody of their own making, and gently guiding their brilliant, restless minds toward the threshold of a unified peace. A profound, synchronized weariness finally settled over the twins, a gentle tide that washed away the last vestiges of their mental chatter. It began as a shared, deep inhalation, a drawing in of the cool, silent night, and culminated in a perfect, harmonious yawn that stretched their features in unison. The two streams of thought, so distinct and vibrant moments before, began to lose their sharp edges, merging into a single, murmuring river of dreamy whispers. The analytical questions about star maps and sea tides softened into half-formed impressions, the witty observations dissolving into a haze of pleasant, abstract notions. Their internal world, once a bright, bustling forum of debate, was now dimming its lights, preparing for the more intuitive language of dreams. As their consciousness slipped its moorings, the dreamscape rose to greet them not as a single image, but as a shared, immersive experience. They found themselves flying, their forms weightless and intertwined, through an impossible, breathtaking library. But this was no library of paper and ink. It was a cathedral of dreams. The shelves stretched into an infinite, stardusted vault, and the books themselves were living things. Their covers pulsed with soft, shifting colors, and when opened, they did not contain words, but released entire sensory experiences. One book, bound in the deep blue of a midnight sky, unfolded into the scent of rain on hot pavement and the feeling of cool sheets. Another, with a cover like shifting mother-of-pearl, whispered the sound of distant ocean waves and the taste of salt on the air. They flew through aisles where books hummed lullabies and corridors where tales of sleep were told not in sentences, but in the gentle weight of a blanket or the soothing rhythm of a heartbeat. It was a realm where every story was a feeling, and every feeling was a path deeper into slumber. Back in the meadow, the physical manifestation of their duality began to harmonize. The subtle tension that often existed between their two minds, the slight tilt of the head that suggested internal debate, the restless energy of a thought not yet shared, melted away. Their shared body relaxed completely, sinking into the soft earth with a final, surrendering sigh. Their breathing, which had been two separate rhythms subtly competing for attention, now fell into a perfect, gentle synchrony. The inhale and exhale became one seamless, flowing motion, a silent duet performed in the dark. It was the ultimate expression of their connection, a physical piece that mirrored the mental unity they had found in their storytelling. The boundary between the dream library and the waking world dissolved. The whispers of the books became the whispers of the wind in the grass. The feeling of flight became the sensation of floating on the deep, dark sea of sleep. Their curious conversation, which had filled the evening with such vibrant energy, had reached its natural, beautiful conclusion, not in silence, but in a wordless, shared understanding. No longer two separate voices, but a single, harmonized spirit, Gemini drifted into the embrace of the night, their synchronized breathing a soft, steady rhythm against the vast, quiet backdrop of the stars. A deep, resonant tide of emotion swelled within Cancer's soft-shelled heart, a feeling as vast and ancient as the moon-pooled oceans she so dearly loved. While the others had turned inward, focusing on their personal journeys to sleep, her own needs were inextricably linked to the well-being of her celestial family. The day's memories, tender and sharp as sea glass, washed over her. She remembered the bright, unguarded laughter of Aries, the quiet satisfaction in Taurus's eyes, the brilliant, tangled thoughts pouring from Gemini. Each moment was a precious pearl she had collected and now held close. A profound, bittersweet ache filled her. The beauty of the day was over, and the vulnerability of the night was upon them. Her own comfort could wait. Her sacred duty was to ensure that every single one of her friends felt safe, seen, and cherished before she could even think of closing her own eyes. With a quiet, shuffling grace, she began her rounds, her movements as gentle as a lapping wave. She did not move with purpose, but with presence, her large, luminous eyes scanning the clearing, reading the subtle language of posture and breath. Her first stop was Aries, now slumbering deeply. She paused by his pillow fort, her shell gleaming in the moonlight, and with a delicate claw, she gently tugged the corner of his crimson blanket, pulling it more securely over his shoulder. The ram, lost in his cloud parade, stirred slightly, a soft, contented sigh escaping him as he settled more deeply into the warmth. A small, satisfied smile touched Cancer's lips. The bold warrior was safe. She moved on, her path a meandering, caring line through the sleeping forms. She passed Taurus, whose rhythmic, purring snores were a testament to his perfect comfort, and she simply allowed herself a moment to bask in the solidity of his peace. She paused near Gemini, observing their perfectly synchronized breathing, and felt a swell of maternal pride, as if their harmonious rest was a personal victory. When she reached Leo, she noticed a single, silky fold of his robe had fallen from his throne-like bed. With infinite care, she gathered the fabric, its smoothness cool against her claw, and draped it back over him, arranging it so it flowed with a regal elegance even in sleep. He, dreaming of his peaceful kingdom, seemed to sit a little straighter, a faint, proud smile gracing his sleeping features. Her rounds were not about fixing problems, but about bearing witness and offering silent, tangible love. She was the moon's emissary in the meadow, her nurturing instinct, a gentle, protective force field around the entire gathering. She wanted to smooth every metaphorical wrinkle, to tuck in every wandering worry, to create an environment so saturated with safety that fear could not take root. Her own bedtime would come, but only after she had made one final, quiet circuit, her soft-shelled heart a lighthouse beaming its caring light over every sleeping sign, ensuring that in the vast, dark ocean of the night, not a single one of her loved ones would feel adrift. Satisfied that her celestial family was safe and settled, Cancer finally allowed her focus to turn inward, to the small, sacred space that was her own. Her nurturing energy, so freely given to others, now needed to be poured back into the vessel of her own soul. Her sleeping area was not a fortress or a throne, but a shrine to memory, a physical manifestation of the home she carried within her heart. With a tenderness usually reserved for a sleeping child, she began her preparations, each action a slow, deliberate prayer of self-care. From a small, woven bag nestled beside her bedding, she carefully withdrew her most precious treasures. First came the framed photographs, their glass surfaces smudged with the loving patina of countless touches. She arranged them in a gentle arc around her pillow, a faded image of her and her grandmother standing by the shimmering, moonlit sea, a joyful snapshot of all 12 signs gathered during a summer solstice celebration, their faces bright with laughter. A portrait of her parents, their kind eyes seeming to watch over her even now. Each picture was an anchor, a tether to a love that was both past and eternally present. They were not mere decorations. They were promises that she was never alone, that the bonds of family stretched across time and space to hold her. Next, she lit her nightlight. It was not a modern electric thing, but a small, hand-blown glass globe with a single, fat candle nestled inside. As the wick caught flame, it cast a soft, golden, wavering glow that pushed back the deepest shadows without challenging the gentle authority of the moon. The light danced over the photographs, making the faces within seem to breathe, and painted warm, shifting patterns on the interior of her pearlescent shell. This small, brave light was her declaration against the dark, a beacon that said, "Here is safety, here is love." With her visual comforts in place, she turned to taste and sound. She poured hot water over a sachet of chamomile flowers, the steam rising in a fragrant cloud that smelled of sunny fields and quiet afternoons. As she waited for the tea to steep to a pale gold, a hum started deep in her chest, a low, wordless melody that was as much a part of her as the shell on her back. It was her grandmother's lullaby, a tune carried on the salt spray of her ancestral shores, its notes as soothing and constant as the tide. She cradled the warm mug in her claws, the heat seeping into her, and took a slow, savoring sip. The tea was mild and honey-sweet, a liquid comfort that warmed her from the inside out, a perfect echo of the golden light that warmed her from without. Sitting there in her circle of light, surrounded by the faces of her loved ones, the warm mug in her claws, and the old lullaby on her lips, Cancer felt a profound sense of wholeness. This ritual was not just about preparing for sleep. It was an active remembrance of why she nurtured, of where her strength came from. It was built from the love of her grandmother, the camaraderie of her friends, the steadfastness of her parents. Each element, the photos, the light, the tea, the song, was a thread in the tapestry of home she wove around herself every night. In this quiet, sacred space, the great nurturer allowed herself to be nurtured, drawing strength from the very love she so freely gave, filling the well of her own tender heart until it overflowed with a peaceful, ready contentment. The final sip of chamomile tea was a warm, honeyed benediction, the last note of her grandmother's lullaby, a soft sigh that faded into the night's embrace. The golden glow of her nightlight seemed to pulse in time with her slowing heartbeat, a gentle, rhythmic beacon in the quiet clearing. The faces in the photographs watched over her with their silent, eternal smiles, their love a tangible presence that filled the space around her. The careful tending of others, the meticulous construction of her own sanctuary, it had all led to this moment of perfect, peaceful surrender. With a final, contented glance around her circle of light, Cancer allowed her heavy eyelids to drift shut. The world of the meadow dissolved, not into darkness, but into the warm, welcoming landscape of her dreams. Her dream was the ultimate expression of her soul's deepest desire, a home, not a house of wood and stone, but a living, breathing embodiment of safety and love. It was a cozy, sprawling cottage built from woven moonbeams and thatched with starlight, its windows glowing with the same soft, golden light as her nightlight. Inside, the air was perpetually warm, scented with baking bread and drying lavender. A great, crackling fireplace dominated the main room, its flames dancing without consuming, casting a rosy, shifting light over the scene. And there in this dream home were all the zodiac signs, not as powerful celestial beings, but as cherished family, safe and utterly loved. She saw Aries, not leading a charge, but curled on a soft rug. Before the fire, his restless energy soothed into a deep, peaceful sleep. Taurus lounged in an overstuffed armchair, a blanket of cloud wool pulled up to his chin, a look of pure bliss on his face. Gemini sat together on a window seat, not debating, but quietly pointing out constellations to each other, their duality harmonized into a single, shared wonder. She moved through the dream, her dream self ensuring every detail was perfect. She fluffed a pillow for Virgo, straightened a crown for Leo, and poured a cup of dream tea for a contemplative Scorpio. There was no danger here, no worry, no loneliness. It was a sanctuary she had built from the very fabric of her nurturing spirit, a place where every soul was sheltered and every heart was full. Her dreams were not an escape, but an extension of her waking purpose, a protective, warm embrace that held the entire zodiac within its walls. Back in the waking world, her physical form gave the final, gentle signals of her contentment. Her breathing deepened into a slow, steady rhythm, each exhale a soft, sighing release of the day's cares. Nestled within the protective curve of her shell, surrounded by her photos and the soft glow of her nightlight, she seemed the very picture of tranquil safety. And then from her parted lips came the faintest of sounds, a soft, rhythmic snore like the gentle lapping of water against a sheltered shore. It was a sound of profound contentment, the audible expression of a heart that had given its all and was now finally at rest. Cancer, the great nurturer of the zodiac, slept. Her dreams were a fortress of love, her gentle snores a lullaby for the meadow. She had ensured everyone else was safe and comfortable, and in doing so, had earned her own deep, restorative peace. Cradled in the home she had built both in reality and in her dreams, she drifted deeper, her protective, warm spirit finally allowing itself to be protected by the very night it so cherished. Every king, even a king of dreams, required a proper address to his subjects before his grand departure. As the last of Cancer's nurturing light was tucked away and the meadow settled into a deeper hush, Leo, the lion, stood before the only audience that truly mattered at this hour. His own magnificent reflection. He had found a small, still pool of rainwater cupped in a hollow of stone, its surface a perfect, dark mirror beneath the moon's approving gaze. This was not a moment of vanity, but one of vital preparation, a rehearsal for the most important performance of the night. Sleep, for a being of his stature, could not be a meek surrender. It had to be a majestic procession, a regal entrance into the kingdom of slumber, and every detail of his demeanor needed to reflect the grandeur of the occasion. He drew a deep, theatrical breath, his broad chest swelling, the golden fur of his mane catching the moonlight like a crown of spun light. His reflections stared back, a noble creature of power and poise, and Leo addressed him with the gravity of a sovereign addressing his court. He practiced the slow, deliberate blink that would signal his benevolent departure, a gesture meant to convey both authority and a gracious farewell to the waking world. He adjusted the angle of his head, a fraction of a degree higher, until his profile was a study in leonine dignity against the stardusted sky. In the silence of his mind, he composed the words of his bedtime proclamation. Let it be known, the silent speech began, that Leo, first of his name, guardian of the celestial pride, now departs for the realm of dreams. Let the stars bear witness to his peaceful conquest, and let the moon light his path to a throne of clouds. His dramatic nature was not mere show, it was the very essence of his spirit, the lens through which he experienced the world. To simply lie down and close his eyes felt common. It lacked ceremony, it lacked significance. He needed to feel the weight of the moment, to orchestrate his own transition from the vibrant king of the day to the serene monarch of the night. He envisioned the journey to Dreamland not as a passive drift, but as a stately parade. There would be a velvet-roped path, lined with bowing constellations, a fanfare of whispering night breezes, and a coronation at the gates of sleep, where a diadem of peaceful thoughts would be placed upon his brow. His confidence was not arrogance, but a deep-seated knowledge of his own role in the celestial tapestry. He was the sun's diurnal counterpart, and his rest, like the sun's setting, deserved to be a spectacular, celebrated event. Satisfied with the regal composure of his reflection, he gave a final, approving nod. The speech was perfected, the posture was flawless. The stage was set. Turning from the still pool, his gaze swept across the slumbering meadow, his subjects already deep in their own dream quests. A flicker of pride warmed him. They rested safely under his watch, even in his absence. Now it was time for the main event. The grand entrance awaited. With a slow, deliberate turn, he padded toward his sleeping area, his movements fluid and powerful, each step a silent drumroll preceding the king's final, glorious act of the day. The royal rest. Having perfected his silent oration, Leo turned from the moonlit pool to the final, sacred preparations of his bedtime coronation. His sleeping area was not a mere nest of blankets. It was a throne room awaiting its sovereign. From a polished wooden chest, he withdrew his most treasured nocturnal regalia. First came the robe, a cascade of liquid midnight silk that whispered of starlight and shadow. He swung it around his broad shoulders with a practiced flourish, the fabric settling against his golden fur with a cool, weightless embrace. It flowed behind him like a captured piece of the night sky, its hem brushing softly against the moss. Then, with the solemnity of a high priest, he lifted the dream diadem. It was not gold or jewels, but a delicate, woven circlet of moonvines and woven wishes, set with a single luminous pearl that glowed with a soft, internal light. He placed it upon his brow, the cool weight a perfect counterpoint to the warmth of his mane, and felt an immediate shift in his being. He was no longer just Leo of the meadow. He was Leo, monarch of the moonlit hour, ready to claim his dream domain. With his royal attire in place, he turned to the atmosphere of his court. From a small, shell-shaped device, he summoned the evening's soundtrack, a soft, swelling symphony of classical music. The notes were not loud, but they filled the space around him, a tapestry of cellos and flutes that spoke of grand ballrooms and heroic, peaceful journeys. The melody wove through the rustling leaves and the distant crickets' chorus, elevating the mundane night sounds into a proper orchestral accompaniment for a king's retirement. He closed his eyes, allowing the music to wash over him, and as he did, his magnificent imagination took flight. He was no longer standing in a quiet clearing. He was on a vast, open-air balcony suspended among the stars themselves. Below him, the zodiac meadow was a tapestry of muted colors and soft, sleeping forms. And above, surrounding him on all sides, the constellations had gathered as his audience. The Great Bear, Ursa Major, dipped its starry head in a slow, respectful bow. Cygnus, the swan, spread its luminous wings in a silent ovation. Orion, the mighty hunter, laid his glittering sword at his feet. A thunderous, silent applause rippled through the cosmos, a vibration of pure adulation that he felt in his very bones. It was not the raucous cheer of a daytime crowd, but a deep, resonant approval from the universe itself, acknowledging his worth, his presence, his right to rule this peaceful hour. This imagined recognition was the final, essential element, the balm his soul craved. The ritual, for all its drama, was profoundly soothing. The silken robe was a tactile comfort, the diadem a focal point for his drifting thoughts, the music a gentle guide for his emotions. His innate, roaring need for recognition was not stifled, but elegantly fulfilled in this private, peaceful theater of his own creation. He was embracing his own nature, transforming what could be a lonely craving into a beautiful, self-contained ceremony. The applause of the stars was all he needed. It was an acknowledgement that he was seen, he was celebrated, and he was loved by the very cosmos he so proudly represented. Standing there, bathed in moonlight and music, crowned with dreams and wrapped in night, Leo felt a deep, resonant peace settle over his royal heart. The king was ready to ascend to his throne. The imagined applause of the constellations faded into a gentle, humming silence, the final, approving note of his celestial fanfare. The silken robe now felt less like a ceremonial garment and more like a second skin of pure night, its cool whisper a soothing counterpoint to the warmth of his own body. The dream diadem on his brow seemed to grow lighter, its luminous pearl pulsing in time with his slowing heartbeat, a tiny, captive moon guiding him home. The final act of his royal performance had arrived. With a grace befitting his station, Leo turned and approached the centerpiece of his throne room, his bed. It was not a simple pile of moss and blankets, but a raised dais he had constructed from soft, fragrant cedar boughs and layered with the finest, deepest pile velvet cushions in shades of gold and crimson. This was his throne of slumber, and he ascended to it with a slow, deliberate dignity. He settled upon the luxurious cushions, the silken robe pooling around him like a spill of midnight. He arranged himself not for mere comfort, but for maximum regal effect, reclining on his side with one powerful foreleg extended, his magnificent mane cascading over the pillows like a golden waterfall. The weight of the day, the energy of his performance, and the profound peace of his ritual finally settled upon him, a welcome heaviness that spoke of duties fulfilled and honors rightfully earned. He let out a long, soft sigh, the last conscious breath of the waking king, and allowed his heavy-lidded eyes to close. The transition was seamless, a sovereign's graceful abdication of the waking world in favor of the dream kingdom that awaited his rule. And what a kingdom it was! His dream unfolded with the clarity and grandeur of a coronation tapestry. He stood on the balcony of a magnificent, airy palace made of white marble and woven sunlight, its towers brushing against the bottoms of fluffy, benevolent clouds. Below, a vast, peaceful kingdom stretched to the horizon, a land of rolling green hills, sparkling, gentle rivers, and prosperous, happy villages. His subjects were not lions, but all the creatures of the meadow and the sky, living together in perfect harmony. He saw Aries' rams and Taurus' cattle grazing side by side, Gemini's songbirds and Cancer's otters playing in the clear water, all under the benevolent gaze of his dream self. There were no wars to wage, no disputes to settle, only a kingdom to oversee with a calm, joyful heart. He was not a ruler who commanded, but one who presided, a beloved king whose very presence was a guarantee of peace and celebration. The fulfillment was absolute, a deep, resonant joy that soaked into every fiber of his dreaming being. Back in the meadow, the physical Leo mirrored his dream king's serenity. His breathing deepened into a slow, majestic rhythm, each inhale a long, stately draft, each exhale a soft, sighing release of sovereignty. And then, the sound of his slumber began. It started as a low, gentle rumble deep in his chest, a vibration that was felt more than heard. It grew into a soft, resonant snore, a sound that was not coarse or loud, but regal and measured. It rose and fell in a steady, dignified cadence, like the distant, rhythmic tolling of a peaceful kingdom's evening bell. It was the sound of a monarch utterly at peace, a lion whose roar had been softened into a purr of profound contentment. A smile, small but unmistakable, graced his sleeping features. It was not the proud, theatrical smile of his practice, but a genuine, unguarded expression of pure, celebrated fulfillment. He had entered his dream kingdom, and it was everything he had ever wanted. The king was home. Leo, the proud lion of the Zodiac, lay in deep, regal rest, his throne of cushions holding him safe, his royal snores a gentle proclamation of the peace he had found, and the smile on his face a testament to a soul that felt, at long last, perfectly and gloriously celebrated. Perfection was not an abstract concept for Virgo, it was a tangible, achievable state, and its pursuit was the quiet engine of her existence. As the last, regal echoes of Leo's slumber faded into the general hum of the sleeping meadow, Virgo's work was just beginning. While others sought comfort, adventure, or recognition in their rituals, she sought order. A single stray leaf lying on the edge of her designated sleeping area was not a part of nature's beauty, but a flaw in the composition, a variable that required correction. Her keen, analytical eyes, the color of cool slate, scanned her surroundings with the dispassionate precision of a cartographer mapping an unknown land. Every detail was assessed, categorized, and assigned its proper place. Her bedtime routine would not be a surrender to whimsy, but a systematic, step-by-step procedure designed to optimize the transition from wakefulness to restorative sleep. From a small, perfectly organized pouch made of unbleached linen, she withdrew her most essential tool, a checklist. It was not scribbled on a scrap of paper, but neatly inscribed on a smooth, pale birch bark tablet, the items written in a hand so precise it looked printed. The list was her anchor, her guide through the potential chaos of the evening. She ran a slender finger down the first column, her lips moving silently as she confirmed each task. 1. Clear sleeping area of all foreign debris. She began there, meticulously picking up the offending leaf, a stray twig, and 3 blades of grass that had dared to grow at a non-uniform angle. She deposited them in a small, designated compost pile at the edge of the clearing, her movements economical and devoid of wasted motion. Next on the list was the bedding itself. This was her masterpiece, her nightly sculpture of comfort and logic. She approached her blankets and pillows not with Taurus's sensual relish, but with the focus of an engineer assembling a precision instrument. 2. Dust and air bedding. She lifted each woolen blanket, giving it a series of sharp, efficient snaps to dislodge any microscopic particles of pollen or dust, the fabric cracking softly in the still air. She then laid them out flat on the moss, allowing the cool night breeze to freshen them. Her pillows received the same treatment, each one. Plumped not for cozy softness, but for structural integrity and even support. She examined the seams, ensuring they were straight and secure. Then came the most critical phase, 3. Align pillows and blankets to geometric perfection. This was where her detail-oriented nature truly shone. She returned the pillows to their place, but they were not casually tossed. She used the long shadow of a nearby tree, cast by the moon, as a natural ruler. She adjusted each pillow until its edges ran perfectly parallel to the shadow's line. The blankets were layered with the same mathematical precision, their corners meeting at exact right angles, their hems aligned to create a series of perfect, nested rectangles. There was no guesswork, only measurement and correction. A wrinkle was not a charming quirk. It was a problem to be solved. She smoothed the surface of the top blanket with the flat of her hand until it was as taut and flawless as a still lake under a windless sky. Satisfied with the visual order, she took a step back to survey her work. Her sleeping area was now a pristine island of harmony in the gentle wildness of the meadow. Every item was in its designated place, every line was straight, every surface was clean. The chaos of the day had been methodically processed and filed away, its loose ends neatly tied. This meticulous organization was not a compulsion, but a reflection of her deepest need. To create a world of clarity and purpose, even in something as seemingly simple as preparing for bed. For Virgo, a perfectly made bed was not just a place to sleep. It was a promise of a mind uncluttered, a sanctuary for thoughts as orderly and aligned as the stars above. The foundation for a methodical moment of rest was now complete. With her sleeping area arranged into a sanctuary of geometric precision, Virgo transitioned to the next phase of her ritual, one designed to bring the same meticulous order to her own body and mind. The external world was now perfectly aligned. It was time to align the internal. She stood at the edge of her pristine bedding, her posture as straight and purposeful as the lines of her blankets, and began a series of gentle, deliberate stretches. This was not the vigorous shadowboxing of Aries, but a slow, conscious unwinding of the day's accumulated tensions. She started with her neck, tilting her head slowly from side to side, her keen eyes closed as she focused on the subtle release of each tight muscle fiber. She moved to her shoulders, rolling them back in slow, perfect circles, then extended her arms in a methodical reach for the sky, her fingertips tracing invisible, orderly lines in the air. Each stretch was held for a precise count of 7 heartbeats, no more, no less, a rhythm that mirrored the steady, reliable ticking of a fine clock. This was a physical inventory, a way of identifying and soothing every minor ache and stiffness, ensuring her body was as perfectly prepared for rest as her bedding. After her stretches, she turned to hydration, an act she viewed as an internal purification. From a crystal-clear carafe, she poured water into a simple, spotless glass. Then, from a small linen pouch, she selected a single thin slice of lemon, its yellow skin unblemished. She placed it carefully into the water, watching as it slowly sank, releasing tiny, effervescent bubbles that swirled in a brief, chaotic dance before dissolving into the clear liquid. The lemon was not for bold flavor, but for its cleansing properties, its sharp, clean essence, a symbolic and physical purifier. She drank the water in slow, measured sips, each one a conscious act of washing away the mental dust of the day, of clearing the internal palate for the clarity of sleep. The cool, slightly tart liquid felt like a benediction, a stream of order flowing through her. With her body soothed and purified, she sat on the edge of her perfectly made bed, her hands resting neatly in her lap. She closed her eyes, and her mind, always analytical, began its final task of the evening, a systematic review of the day's events. This was not a passive reminiscence, but an active, structured analysis. She replayed interactions, examining her own words and actions for efficiency and effectiveness. Had her suggestion to Gemini about organizing their book bundle been helpful? Could she have been more precise in her observation of the cloud formations with Sagittarius? She considered the behaviors of others not with judgment, but with a detached curiosity, noting patterns and cause and effect relationships. Every moment was a data point, a lesson to be filed away for future reference and self-improvement. This mental filing was as essential to her as the physical organizing. It was how she processed the chaotic stream of experience into a structured library of knowledge, ensuring that no day passed without yielding some small insight, some incremental step toward a more perfect understanding of herself and her world. A deep, quiet sense of readiness settled over her. The stretches had eased her muscles, the lemon water had cleansed her senses, and the mental review had ordered her thoughts. There were no loose ends, no unresolved tensions, no clutter in her physical or mental space. She felt prepared, not just tired, but optimally, efficiently prepared for sleep. Her desire for self-improvement was satisfied for the day, her need for efficiency met through the flawless execution of her ritual. She had transformed the potentially messy transition into sleep into a model of purposeful action. Everything was in its place, most of all, her own mind. Virgo was now ready to surrender, not to chaos, but to the deep, restorative, and perfectly orderly silence of the night. The final, orderly thought was filed away, the mental ledger balanced for the day. With the same quiet deliberation that had characterized her entire ritual, Virgo lay back upon her geometrically perfect bedding, her body aligning itself naturally with the precise edges of the blankets. Her head found the exact center of the pillow, her spine a straight line parallel to the shadow guide she had used for alignment. There was no fidgeting, no last-minute adjustment. Every variable had been accounted for, every potential disruption to her peace had been systematically neutralized. The profound stillness she had cultivated externally now seeped inward, a cool, clear tide washing over her busy mind. Her breathing, already slow and measured from her stretches, deepened into a rhythm as regular and reliable as the turning of the stars, a soft, steady in and out that was the very essence of controlled calm. As the waking world receded, the dreamscape arose to meet her, and it was a realm of breathtaking, impossible order. She dreamed of the night sky, but this was no random scattering of stars. Each celestial body was a point of perfect, crystalline light, connected to its neighbors by shimmering silver lines that formed vast, intricate geometric patterns across the velvet dark. Constellations were not mythical beasts, but elegant theorems and flawless blueprints. Galaxies spun in precise, logarithmic spirals, their arms tracing the golden ratio with mathematical grace. There were no chaotic meteor showers or wayward comets here. Every object moved in a preordained, harmonious orbit, its path a beautiful, predictable equation. Her own dream self floated through this cosmic architecture, not as an explorer, but as a quiet observer, appreciating the sublime logic of it all. Her dreams were not narratives, but serene landscapes of pure structure, where every element was in its rightful place and functioned with flawless efficiency. Her sleep was not an escape from consciousness, but its most profound and restorative expression. The analytical engine of her mind, which had been so actively engaged in sorting and refining the day, now shifted into a lower, deeper gear. In the quiet halls of her slumber, it performed its essential maintenance, defragmenting memories, consolidating learning, and polishing her thoughts until they gleamed with renewed clarity. It was a sleep devoid of the clutter of anxiety or the chaos of unresolved worries. There was no room for such disorder in the sanctuary she had built. Her rest was a deep, systemic reboot, a silent, powerful process that would leave her mind sharp, refreshed, and perfectly prepared for the logical challenges of the dawn. When the first hint of morning finally tinged the eastern horizon with a pale, orderly light, Virgo's eyes opened. There was no groggy confusion, no slow struggle back to awareness. Her transition was as seamless and deliberate as her descent into sleep had been. She awoke with a mind that felt clean and spacious, like a well-organized room after a thorough tidying. The peace she had so methodically constructed the night before was still with her, a tangible sense of harmony that stemmed from the deep, unshakable knowledge that everything was in its place. The world was a complex system, but she had found her own perfect algorithm for navigating it. In the quiet, structured embrace of the night, Virgo had not just slept. She had achieved a state of perfect equilibrium, symbolizing the profound and restorative peace that can only be found in a world of one's own meticulous making. A subtle, persistent dissonance hummed at the edge of Libra's awareness, a faint, off-key note in the otherwise harmonious symphony of the slumbering meadow. For her, the world was a grand, interconnected mobile, and her soul was the central pivot from which all balance was suspended. The day's events, now concluded, were not merely memories to be stored away, but a collection of weights and counterweights that she felt compelled to assess with her innate, diplomatic sensitivity. As she sat in her chosen spot, a natural alcove where the moonlight fell in a perfect silver pool, she closed her eyes and let the scales of her mind begin. Their delicate work, each interaction, each decision, was placed upon them with care. She recalled the minor disagreement between Aries and Taurus over the best patch of sun that morning. Had her gentle suggestion for sharing truly satisfied both parties, or had one conceded with a hint of resentment? The memory carried the faint, psychic weight of unresolved tension. She revisited her conversation with Scorpio, whose intense, probing questions had been met with her most careful, fair-minded answers. Had she been truly impartial, or had she leaned slightly, unconsciously, toward a more pleasing, less challenging perspective? The thought left a featherlight imbalance, a tilt in her inner equilibrium. Even the simple act of choosing which wildflowers to weave into a crown for Pisces had been a small exercise in justice, ensuring the colors were complementary, the sizes varied yet harmonious. Any discord, no matter how minor, felt like a splinter in her soul, a disruption to the beautiful, peaceful order she believed the universe was meant to embody. This feeling of unsettled energy was not a storm of emotion, but a quiet, profound discomfort, the sensation of a picture hanging crooked on a wall or a melody missing its resolving chord. It was a physical ache for symmetry, a spiritual thirst for beauty and peace. Her diplomatic nature was not a role she played, but the very lens through which she perceived reality. Fairness was not an ideal. It was a necessity, as vital to her as air. The gentle snores and sighs of her sleeping companions were a testament to the peace they had each found, but for Libra, that peace was conditional. It could not be claimed until the internal ledger was balanced, until every social and emotional debt was paid, and every relationship felt perfectly, beautifully aligned. The quest for external harmony had to begin within. The clamor of the day had to be silenced, not by force, but by the gentle, unwavering pressure of equilibrium. Her bedtime ritual would not be one of comfort or conquest, but of recalibration, a sacred, silent effort to find her center, and in doing so, restore a tiny piece of the world's fractured peace. With the internal dissonance identified, Libra began the physical ritual that would soothe it, a ceremony dedicated to the restoration of equilibrium. From a small, carved sandalwood box, she selected a single stick of incense, its blend of frankincense and lavender chosen for their purifying and calming properties. She lit the tip, watching as a delicate curl of smoke, pale gray in the moonlight, began its slow, graceful ascent. It did not billow, but rose in a single, unwavering column before the gentlest of breezes caught it, causing it to dance and spiral in elegant, symmetrical patterns. She placed the incense in a holder of polished river stone, its solid, grounded form a perfect counterpoint to the ethereal, rising smoke. The scent began to permeate the air around her, a fragrant veil that separated her alcove from the rest of the world, marking it as a sacred space for balance. Then she rose to her feet, her movements fluid and deliberate. Her yoga was not a strenuous exercise, but a moving meditation, a physical prayer for harmony. She began with the mountain pose, standing tall and rooted, feeling the solid earth beneath her feet and the infinite sky above, embodying the connection between heaven and earth. She flowed into the tree pose, lifting one foot to rest against her inner thigh, her arms rising like branches. For a long moment, she held the position, her body a study in balanced tension, her focus absolute as she fought the subtle sway, finding the perfect, still center within the pose. It was a microcosm of her entire quest, finding stability not through rigidity, but through a dynamic, conscious equilibrium. She moved through a series of other asanas, each one a deliberate act of aligning muscle and bone, breath and intention, seeking to make her physical form a mirror of the inner peace she so desperately craved. It was during a gentle, forward-bending fold that she became aware of a presence at the edge of her fragrant circle. Scorpio stood there, having emerged from his own deep reflections, his intense gaze not intrusive, but observant. He did not speak, nor did he need to. Libra, feeling his quiet energy, slowly straightened from her pose and met his eyes. A silent understanding passed between them, a recognition of their shared, though differently expressed, depth. She gestured with a graceful hand toward the night sky, her movement encompassing the moon, the stars, and the soft, velvety darkness. It was an invitation to share in the beauty, not through words, but through mutual appreciation. Scorpio's gaze followed her gesture, lifting to the cosmos, where she saw balance and aesthetic harmony in the arrangement of the stars. He saw the profound mystery of the void and the fierce, burning truth of distant suns. Yet, in that moment, their perspectives did not clash, but complemented one another. Her need for beauty found an echo in his appreciation for the night's raw, powerful elegance. His search for profound truth was met with her serene acceptance of the universe's inherent balance. They stood together in a comfortable, wordless communion, two different instruments playing a silent, harmonious chord in the moonlit meadow. The connection was brief, but potent, a perfectly balanced moment of shared solitude that satisfied Libra's deep need for relationship without demanding a single syllable. As Scorpio gave a slow, acknowledging nod and melted back into the shadows to continue his own ritual, Libra felt the last of the day's discordant energy dissolve. The incense had cleansed the air, the yoga had aligned her body, and the shared moment had harmonized her spirit. The ritual had done its work, promoting both internal balance and a fleeting, perfect connection. The scales of her soul, once tilted by the day's minor injustices and choices, now hung perfectly level. A deep, soothing calm settled over her, the beautiful, peaceful equilibrium she had been seeking all along. Her need for beauty was satisfied by the night, her need for peace was found within, and her need for connection had been gracefully met. She was ready, at last, to rest. The final, lingering wisp of frankincense and lavender dissolved into the night air, and with it, the last vestige of internal discord faded from Libra's spirit. The wordless communion with Scorpio had been the final, perfect counterweight, a silent exchange that restored her sense of connection without disturbing the serene quiet of the evening. The scales within her soul now hung in absolute equilibrium, not a single thought or memory pulling them out of true. A profound, humming silence filled her, a resonance of perfect balance that was more musical than any sound. With a slow, graceful movement that seemed an extension of her yoga practice, she lowered herself onto her bedding, a simple mat woven from reeds and soft grasses. There was no need for fortresses or thrones. Her peace was her only necessary comfort. She arranged her limbs with a natural symmetry, one hand resting lightly over her heart, the other on her abdomen, as if physically holding the calm center she had so carefully cultivated. As her breathing settled into a slow, even rhythm, each inhale and exhale a perfect, measured exchange with the world, the dreamscape began to gently overlay her consciousness. It was not a landscape that erupted into being, but one that softly bloomed, its colors emerging like watercolors bleeding into damp paper. She dreamed of a world where harmony was not an ideal, but the fundamental law of physics. The sky was a seamless gradient from the palest lavender at the horizon to a deep, velvety indigo overhead, with no harsh line to mark the transition. The trees were not separate entities, but wove their branches together in a living, supportive lattice, their leaves rustling in a chorus that was one single, whispering voice. Rivers flowed without a single ripple of conflict, their waters clear and placid, merging with lakes in such a gentle confluence that it was impossible to tell where one body of water ended and the other began. Even the light had no source and cast no shadow. It simply was, a soft, omnipresent glow in which every color bled softly into the next, creating a world painted in endless, gentle gradients. Here there was no opposition, only beautiful, seamless integration. It was the ultimate expression of her soul, a universe in perfect, peaceful balance. Back in the meadow, her physical form was the very picture of this tranquil equilibrium. Her expression was serene, her features relaxed into a look of gentle acceptance. There was no frown of worry, no smile of triumph, only a smooth, placid countenance that reflected the inner stillness she had achieved. Her breathing remained even and deep, a soft, rhythmic sigh that was the audible expression of balance itself, not too shallow, not too heavy, but a perfect, sustained rhythm that spoke of a system in complete harmony. She did not toss or turn. She was as still as the poised scales she embodied, her body having found its most restful, symmetrical alignment. There was no dramatic moment of surrender, no final, conscious thought. For Libra, sleep was not a fall, but a graceful, seamless merging. The balanced world of her dreams and the balanced peace of her waking ritual became one and the same. The boundary between them dissolved as softly as the colors in her dream sky. She simply drifted, her serene expression unchanged, her even breathing a gentle metronome in the quiet clearing. Libra, the harmonizer of the zodiac, had not just fallen asleep, she had become sleep. She embodied the very tranquility of balance, a living testament to the profound peace that is found not in the absence of conflict, but in the beautiful, perfect stillness at its center. The night held no fear for Scorpio. It was his native element, a velvet cloak that concealed truths the harsh light of day could never reveal. While the others sought peace in comfort, ceremony, or balance, he sought it in the raw, unfiltered depths of his own being. The shadows of the meadow were not a place to hide, but a sanctuary for introspection, a dark mirror in which the day's hidden currents could finally rise to the surface. Seated apart from the soft symphony of snores, his form was a still, dark shape against the deeper dark, his intense gaze turned inward. The day's events played behind his eyes not as a simple sequence, but as a complex tapestry of unspoken motivations, veiled emotions, and potent silences. He had felt the flicker of jealousy when Leo held the group's attention, the sharp, protective surge when Cancer's kindness was momentarily overlooked, the magnetic pull of mystery in Libra's serene smile. These were not passing feelings to be dismissed. They were signposts pointing toward the labyrinth of his own soul, and he felt a compelling, almost gravitational pull to follow them. From a hidden pocket within the dark fabric he wore, he withdrew a small, leather-bound journal and a slender piece of charcoal. The journal was not for recording events, but for excavating them. He opened it to a fresh, black page, the blankness a challenge and an invitation. The charcoal felt like an extension of his will, cool and sharp in his grasp. He did not write in sentences, but in a cascade of single words, fragmented phrases, and sharp, angular symbols that mapped the topography of his inner world. Leo's roar, not envy, but a recognition of a different fire. Cancer's shell, not weakness, but a chosen fortress. The weight of Libra's gaze, a balance that seeks its counterweight. Each notation was a plunge into deeper water, an attempt to strip away the polite veneer of social interaction and uncover the stark, powerful truths that lay beneath. This was his ritual of unmasking. He wrote of the fierce loyalty that burned like a banked furnace in his chest, a passion so intense it sometimes frightened him. He sketched a quick, dark symbol for the secret vulnerabilities he guarded with a scorpion's defensive vigilance, the tender places no one was permitted to see. He confronted the shadows within, the possessive streak, the desire for absolute control, the thirst for transformative, even destructive, truth. To anyone else, these pages might have looked like a map of turmoil, but for Scorpio, the act of writing was a process of alchemy. By dragging these hidden emotions into the conscious light of the moon and the stark reality of the page, He was not feeding their power, but mastering it. He was embracing the full, dark spectrum of his passionate nature, not to be ruled by it, but to understand its depths and currents. The night's mysteries were not outside of him. They were within, and he was their most dedicated and fearless explorer, diving deep into the silent, star-filled waters of his own soul. The final, stark symbol was etched onto the page, a dark star that marked the boundary of his conscious exploration. Closing the journal, Scorpio felt the familiar, potent energy of his introspection coiling within him, a live wire of intensity that needed a new, more visceral channel. The written word had mapped the territory. Now a ritual of fire and scent would allow him to inhabit it. From a small, velvet pouch, he produced 3 candles, each a different shade of deep, resonant color. A wine-dark crimson, a bruised midnight violet, and a black so deep it seemed to swallow the moonlight. He arranged them in a tight triangle before him, their positions deliberate, the points of a sacred geometry that mirrored the threefold nature of his own power, passion, mystery, and transformation. With a single, focused strike of flint on steel, a spark leapt to life, and he touched it to each wick. The flames did not flare, but kindled slowly, growing from a hesitant glimmer to a steady, unwavering burn. They were not the cheerful, dancing lights of a hearth, but focused beacons, their light pooling in the small space between them, creating a well of concentrated radiance in the heart of the shadows. As the flames steadied, their heat began to release the essences trapped within the wax. The crimson candle exhaled the scent of dragon's blood resin, a smoky, ancient fragrance that spoke of primal strength and enduring will. The violet one offered the aroma of frankincense, not the gentle kind Libra used, but a rich, complex scent that cleared the air of illusion and invited profound connection. The black candle released the earthy, intoxicating perfume of patchouli, the scent of rich soil and deep roots, of decay and rebirth intertwined. The 3 scents did not battle for dominance, but braided together into a single, potent incense that wrapped around Scorpio like a second skin. He closed his eyes, breathing it in deeply, and felt the analytical part of his mind begin to quiet. The journal had been a tool of the conscious self. This scented smoke was the key to the subconscious. He focused on the darkness behind his eyelids, not as an empty void, but as the entrance to an inner sanctum. With each breath of the sacred smoke, he felt himself descending, not falling, but diving with purpose, down through layers of waking thought and into the silent, pressurized depths of his own psyche. Here in the subconscious ocean, the truths he had journaled about were no longer abstract concepts, but living, pulsing realities. He could feel the heat of his loyalty as a physical warmth in his chest. He could sense the hard, protective carapace of his vulnerabilities not as a weakness, but as a source of immense, latent power. The night itself seemed to flow into him, its vast, silent strength merging with his own. He was not a small creature in a large meadow, but a concentrated point of cosmic intensity, connected to the blackness between the stars and the secrets buried deep within the earth. This was not a place of fear, but of immense potential. His intensity, so often a source of internal friction, was here revealed as a pure, untamed force, the raw material of his being. Slowly, deliberately, he began the work of transformation. He did not fight the powerful currents of his passion. He invited them to flow through him, visualizing them not as a destructive fire, but as a forge. In the heart of that inner flame, he saw his sharp-edged jealousy being tempered into fierce protectiveness. His desire for control was reshaped into a profound, unshakable self-mastery. The shadows of his nature were not banished, but acknowledged and integrated, their dark energy becoming a source of profound resilience and creative power. The ritual was an act of alchemy, and he was both the alchemist and the elements being transmuted. The scented candles burned lower, their flames steady and sure, external witnesses to the internal conflagration. The raw, chaotic intensity that had driven his deep dive was being refined, purified in the crucible of his own will, transforming from a restless, probing energy into a deep, resonant calm. It was the calm of a storm that has passed, of a truth that has been fully faced. It was not the absence of power, but its perfect, focused containment. Scorpio was not calming down. He was powering up for the journey ahead, his inner strength now a still, deep lake of calm readiness, perfectly poised for the final descent into the world of dreams. The final ember of the black candle guttered and died, its last wisp of patchouli-scented smoke dissolving into the cool night air. The ritual was complete. The potent energy that had coiled within Scorpio, once a live wire of intensity, had been masterfully transmuted. It no longer buzzed with restless inquiry, but hummed with a deep, resonant stillness, like the profound quiet at the bottom of the sea. The external world, the soft snores, the whisper of the breeze, the silver wash of moonlight, faded to a distant murmur. His consciousness, having plumbed the darkest trenches of his own soul, now turned its focus inward one final time, ready to surrender the helm to the vast, creative ocean of his subconscious. He stretched out upon the cool moss, his body aligning itself not with geometric precision, but with the natural contours of the earth, a final act of merging with the deep, dark power of the night. As his eyelids closed, the dreamscape did not rise to meet him, he descended into it. He was diving, not through water, but through layers of liquid shadow, his form weightless and fluid. He descended into a labyrinth of underwater caves, their walls not of stone, but of polished obsidian and swirling, dark pearl. No sunlight penetrated this realm, yet it was far from lifeless. It was illuminated by its own inner radiance. Clusters of bioluminescent fungi cast a soft, electric blue glow, and drifting gardens of ghostly anemones pulsed with a gentle, violet light. This was the landscape of his own inner world, the secret gardens of his subconscious, where his intense, probing nature was not a burden, but the source of all creation. Here, the fierce passions he had confronted were not threats, but the very nutrients that fed this strange, beautiful flora. His jealousy had transformed into intricate, protective coral formations. His desire for truth was a school of silver fish that darted in perfect, knowing patterns. His capacity for profound love was a vast, warm current that nourished everything it touched. In this silent, pressurized world, his intensity became pure creative energy. He did not walk or swim, but willed himself forward, his passage causing the dream caves to reshape themselves around him. A thought would cause a new tunnel to branch off, lined with crystalline formations that sang a soft, chiming melody. A feeling of deep peace would cause a garden of luminous black lotus flowers to bloom in his wake, their petals soft as velvet and cool to the touch. He was both the explorer and the architect of this realm, his will and his imagination one and the same. There was no struggle here, only a seamless, profound expression. The mysteries he had spent the evening unraveling were not solved, but celebrated, their complexity giving rise to ever more beautiful and strange dreamscapes. He had found peace not by escaping his depths, but by fully inhabiting them, by allowing the powerful, often frightening currents of his soul to flow freely into acts of silent, breathtaking creation. His sleep was not a light doze, but a profound plunge. In the meadow, his breathing was almost imperceptible, a slow, deep rhythm that seemed to draw from the earth itself. His body was utterly still, a statue of concentrated repose, all the formidable energy of his waking hours now channeled into the vivid, profound theater of his dreams. There were no snores, no sighs, only the deep, silent absorption of a soul completely immersed in its own truth. He slept the sleep of the abyss, of the trench, of the seed buried deep in the dark soil. It was a restorative slumber that did not merely refresh, but regenerated, rebuilding his spirit from the very core of its power. Scorpio, the intense and mysterious scorpion of the zodiac, had not run from the darkness. He had embraced it, and in its deepest, most silent embrace, he had found his most profound and creative peace. The horizon was not a boundary for Sagittarius, but a promise. Even as the moon climbed to its zenith, and the meadow settled into a collective, contented slumber, the archer's spirit strained at its earthly tether, his heart beating a restless rhythm against the cage of his ribs. While his companions sank into the comforts of home, ceremony, and introspection, his soul was already leagues away, galloping across the starlit plains of his imagination. He lay on his back, one arm tucked behind his head, his gaze not on the familiar constellations above, but on the invisible paths that connected them, the celestial roads he yearned to travel. The gentle sounds of the night, the sigh of the wind, the chorus of crickets, were not a lullaby, but the distant, calling music of lands he had yet to explore, philosophies he had yet to unravel. In his hands he held not a bow, but a book. Its cover was worn soft by countless journeys, its pages thin and translucent as dragonfly wings. It was a volume of travelogues and philosophical musings, a collection of tales from distant lands where mountains kissed the clouds and deserts whispered ancient secrets. He wasn't truly reading the words, he was absorbing their essence, his keen eyes tracing the lines of text as if they were a map. Each sentence was a footstep on a foreign shore, each paragraph a new horizon. He read of spice-scented bazaars under a fiercer sun, of silent, snow-capped peaks that held the wisdom of ages, of vast, trackless oceans whose depths held mysteries to humble any soul. The call of adventure was not something he felt only when awake. It was the very current of his blood, an optimistic, insatiable curiosity that thrived even on the threshold of sleep. He lowered the book to his chest, its weight a comforting presence, and let his eyes drift shut. The meadow around him dissolved, replaced by the vivid landscapes summoned from the page. He was no longer lying on cool moss, but standing on the deck of a great ship, the salt spray stinging his face as he aimed his bow not at a target, but at a distant, uncharted star, using it as his guide. He felt the phantom sway of the deck beneath his feet, the pull of a taut bowstring in his hand, the exhilarating freedom of a journey with no fixed destination. His spirit, so full of fire and forward motion, chafed at the stillness of his body. Sleep felt like a temporary anchor, a necessary pause in an endless expedition. Yet, even in this moment of quiet preparation, his adventurous nature reframed the coming slumber. It was not an end to the day's journey, but the opening of a new, more mysterious frontier. Dreamland was not a place of rest, but the wildest, most uncharted territory of all, and his optimistic, curious spirit was already knocking an arrow of wonder, ready to let it fly into the heart of the coming night. The worn travelogue slipped from his grasp, its pages settling against his chest like a final, comforting map before the true journey began. The phantom salt spray and the sway of the ship's deck faded, leaving only the solid, steady earth beneath him. But for Sagittarius, the end of the story was merely the starting pistol for the imagination. His body was still, yet his mind was in motion, a restless steed champing at the bit. He needed to channel this wanderlust, to transform the boundless energy of his curiosity into a focused, calming ritual. He would not simply wait for sleep to take him. He would practice for the dream hunt, aiming his spirit not at distant horizons, but at the peaceful center of the coming night. He closed his eyes, and in the darkness behind his lids, his trusted bow materialized. It was not a weapon of war, but an instrument of focus, carved from the wood of a wish-granting tree and strung with a filament of starlight. He felt its familiar, balanced weight in his hands, the smooth grain beneath his fingers. He drew a deep, calming breath, and as he exhaled, he nocked an arrow. But this was no ordinary arrow. Its shaft was woven from moonbeams, its fletching was made of soft, gray owl feathers, and its tip was not sharpened flint, but a polished, luminous pearl that glowed with a gentle, guiding light. His target was not a beast or a rival, but a series of peaceful, abstract concepts shimmering in the dream distance. He took aim at a faint, shimmering sphere of stillness. He held his breath, his entire being focused into a single, unwavering point, and released. The moonbeam arrow flew in a silent, silver arc, striking the center of the sphere, which burst not with a sound, but with a wave of profound, calming quiet that washed back over him. He nocked a second arrow, this one fletched with the down of a sleeping dove, and aimed for a drifting, cloud-like form of contentment. He let it fly, and as the pearl tip found its mark, the cloud blossomed into a soft, warm radiance that seeped into his bones, loosening the last knots of restlessness. A third arrow, its shaft braided from whispered lullabies, he aimed at a distant, starry pinprick of wonder. Its flight was true, and the star swelled into a gentle, sparkling shower of peaceful curiosity, a promise that the night's adventures would be filled with awe, not anxiety. Each release was a conscious act of letting go, of trading the frantic desire for physical travel for the serene journey inward. The archer was mastering his most difficult target yet, his own restless soul. After his mental archery practice, he turned to a more earthly comfort. From a leather-wrapped flask, he poured steaming water into a clay cup, steeping a handful of wild sage and a single, star-shaped anise pod. He lifted the cup, and the scent that rose to meet him was the very essence of his wanderer's heart. The clean, sharp smell of a campfire on a cool night, the dry dust of a long trail, and the faint, sweet perfume of distant, unknown blossoms carried on a night wind. He took a slow sip, and the tea was a journey in itself. It tasted of wood smoke and freedom, of stories shared under a canopy of unfamiliar stars, of the quiet satisfaction of a day's-long trek. It was not a potion to make him sleep, but a brew to remind him that every journey, even the journey to sleep, was an adventure to be savored. The ritual was complete. The focused release of his mental archery had honed his boundless energy into a single, peaceful intention. The campfire tea had grounded his star-chasing spirit in the warm, tangible comforts of the earth. His wanderlust had not been extinguished, but masterfully channeled. The call of the open road was still there, but now it was a gentle whisper, inviting him on a new kind of expedition, a calming journey inward, across the silent, starlit landscapes of his own mind, where the greatest discoveries of all were waiting in the quiet country of sleep. The final, smoky sip of sage and starlight tea was a warm farewell to the waking world, a toast to the journey ahead. The focused calm from his mental archery and the earthy comfort of the brew had woven a bridge between his restless spirit and the quiet demands of the night. Sagittarius let his head fall back upon his simple bedroll, his gaze turning upward one last time. The constellations were no longer distant points of light, but familiar signposts, old friends nodding their luminous approval. He gave them a slow, acknowledging blink, a silent promise to visit them soon, and then allowed his eyes to drift shut. The call of the horizon was not silenced, but answered in a new way. The greatest adventure was about to begin, and it required no bow, no map, and no path, only the willing surrender to the boundless country of dreams. As the meadow faded, the dreamscape rushed in to meet him with the exhilarating speed of a shooting star. He was no longer lying down, but standing upright, his form light and ethereal, at the helm of a vessel woven from moonbeams and night winds. With a thought, he launched himself forward, not across land or sea, but through the stardusted void itself. He journeyed through constellations, not as a distant observer, but as an intimate traveler. He sailed through the shimmering rings of Lyra, the celestial harp's music a vibration that tuned his soul to peace. He raced alongside the great bears of Ursa Major and Minor, their starry fur brushing against him with a cool, electric tingle. He navigated the swirling currents of the Milky Way, its river of light carrying him past nebulae that bloomed like silent cosmic flowers, and in these far reaches he found the dream sages. They were not beings of flesh and blood, but manifestations of ancient wisdom, a figure composed of swirling galaxies who taught him the patience of orbiting planets, a serene entity of pure light who spoke, without words, of the freedom found in stillness, an old, kind-eyed star who shared tales of the universe's birth, each story a lesson in the beauty of beginnings and the peace of cyclical endings. They did not give him answers, but posed deeper questions that expanded the horizons of his own mind. He learned that the most profound journey was not outward, but inward, and that true exploration meant understanding the vast, uncharted universe within his own spirit. He embraced this rest not as a pause, but as the most adventurous expedition of all, a voyage into the self, guided by starlight and ancient, dream-born wisdom. Back in the meadow, his physical form gave the final, gentle signal of his departure. His breathing, once quick with the anticipation of adventure, slowed into a long, steady rhythm. And then from his slightly parted lips came the sound of his slumber. It was not a snore of heaviness, but a soft, continuous sigh, like a gentle, persistent wind. It was the sound of a spirit in motion, even in repose, a zephyr carrying him over dream mountains and across silent, starlit seas. It was the audible expression of his journey, a restless, optimistic breath that whispered of new horizons and endless possibilities, even in the depths of sleep. He did not fight the pull of slumber, he leaned into it, as a sailor leans into a favorable wind. The dream sages faded, their lessons settling deep within him. The constellations became a soft, glowing haze. Sagittarius, the eternal archer, had found his target. He had aimed his boundless curiosity at the heart of the night itself, and his arrow of wonder had flown true. Embracing rest as the ultimate adventure, he surrendered completely, his spirit voyaging on through the infinite, welcoming dark, carried ever forward by the soft, wind-like sigh of his own peaceful, exploring dreams. Sleep was not a surrender for Capricorn, it was a strategic investment. As the sea-goat surveyed the slumbering meadow, his fellow signs drifting in their various seas of whimsy and wonder, his own mind was a fortress of purpose, its ramparts built from the achievements of the day and its watchtowers looking toward the ambitions of the dawn. While others yielded to the gentle pull of the moon, he felt the steady, gravitational tug of responsibility. The night was not an end, but a necessary interval, a bridge to be crossed with deliberate, measured steps. Rest was not a luxury to be indulged, but a resource to be managed, a critical phase in the relentless, upward climb toward his goals. Every action, even the act of closing one's eyes, had to serve the grand architecture of his life's work. He sat upright, his posture as straight and unyielding as a mountain crag, his hooves planted firmly on the earth. In the silent theater of his mind, he began his nightly review, a meticulous inventory of the day's progress. He did not dwell on feelings or fleeting impressions. He dealt in facts, in tangible outcomes. He mentally ticked through a list of completed tasks. The small dam he had helped repair in the babbling creek, a model of efficient engineering. The thoughtful counsel he had offered Virgo on structuring her compost pile, an exercise in practical wisdom. The new, more challenging path he had scouted up the eastern hill, a testament to his perseverance. Each accomplishment was a solid stone, carefully laid upon the foundation of the previous day's work. He felt the quiet, profound satisfaction of a day well spent, a feeling more valuable to him than any fleeting joy or comfort. This was the fuel for his ambition, the proof that his discipline was yielding results. But reflection was only the first step. A true leader, a true builder, always looked ahead. With the day's ledger balanced, he turned his focus to the morrow. He began to set his intentions for the night, not as vague hopes, but as specific, actionable directives for his subconscious. He would not simply dream, he would dream productively. He visualized the blueprint for a new, more stable bridge across the creek, instructing his sleeping mind to work on the problem of load distribution and material strength. He focused on the summit of the distant, granite peak he intended to climb one day, willing his dreams to map potential routes and anticipate challenges. His responsible and determined personality reframed the very nature of sleep. It was not an escape from his duties, but an extension of them, a silent, focused workshop where the groundwork for tomorrow's victories could be laid. The disciplined dream was not a fantasy. It was the next, most crucial item on his agenda, a purposeful step in the meticulously planned ascent of his life. With the day's accomplishments catalogued and tomorrow's objectives clearly defined, Capricorn transitioned into the physical execution of his bedtime ritual. This was not a time for relaxation in the traditional sense, but for the application of a strict, unwavering discipline, a discipline he knew to be the most direct path to genuine peace. Every movement was deliberate, every action part of a prescribed sequence designed to optimize the transition from strategic wakefulness to productive slumber. He rose from his seated position and began a series of precise, almost militaristic preparations. He smoothed the moss of his sleeping area with the flat of his hooves, ensuring a perfectly level surface. He aligned his simple, woolen blanket so its edges ran parallel to the shadow of a nearby cedar, a habit of order that calmed his mind. He then performed a short set of isometric exercises, tensing and releasing each major muscle group in a specific order, not to exhaust himself, but to acknowledge and then consciously release the physical residue of the day's labor. This systematic unwinding was a command to his body. The work is done for now, stand down. With his physical vessel prepared, he sat once more, assuming a posture of perfect, upright stillness. He closed his eyes, his breathing slowing into a measured, controlled rhythm. This was the core of his ritual, a focused meditation on success. He did not visualize wild celebrations or easy triumphs. Instead, he constructed a detailed mental blueprint of a goal achieved. Tonight, it was the completed bridge across the creek. In his mind's eye, he saw not the finished structure, but the process, the precise interlocking of stones, the perfect balance of the arch, the satisfying solidity as the final keystone was set in place. He felt the gritty texture of the granite, the strain in his muscles giving way to the profound satisfaction of a problem solved, a challenge met. He immersed himself in the feeling of a day well spent, a sensation as tangible to him as the earth beneath him. It was a feeling composed of earned fatigue, quiet pride, and the clean exhaustion that comes from having nothing left to give but one's best. This meditation was not a fantasy. It was a reinforcement of his core belief that satisfaction is not found, but built, stone by disciplined stone. The ritual, in its beautiful severity, was the key that unlocked the door to a profound and well-earned peace. The relentless drive that propelled him up metaphorical mountains by day was now the very force that allowed him to descend into the quiet valleys of sleep by night. By channeling his ambition into this structured ceremony, he transformed his powerful will from a taskmaster into a guardian of his own rest. The need to achieve was not suppressed, but fulfilled in this final, purposeful act of preparing for restorative sleep. The strict routine, the meditation on earned success, the feeling of a day conclusively concluded, it all wove together into a tapestry of absolute readiness. The chaos of random thought was banished. The anxiety of unfinished business was quelled. There was only the clear, calm certainty that he had done what was required and was now granting himself the necessary respite to do it all again tomorrow. In the unwavering light of his own discipline, Capricorn found a peace more solid and reliable than any fleeting comfort, a silence within himself that was the ultimate reward for a life lived with purpose and intent. The final, silent affirmation of a day well spent settled over Capricorn like a mantle of granite dust, a tangible residue of accomplishment that was his truest form of comfort. The rigid posture of his meditation softened by a single, deliberate degree, a controlled release of the will that had held him so upright. He had reviewed the past, planned for the future, and now, with the same unwavering determination he applied to every ascent, he turned his focus to the present climb. The climb into sleep. He did not lie back with a sigh of surrender, but lowered himself with the careful, measured grace of a mountaineer, securing his position for the night. His body settled onto the leveled moss, his head finding its designated spot on the folded blanket, every movement a continuation of the discipline that defined him. The ambitious drive that had fueled his day was now banked, its embers glowing with the steady, patient heat of a purpose that could afford to rest, because it knew the work would resume at dawn. As the conscious world receded, the landscape of his dreams arose with the stark, beautiful clarity of a summit achieved at first light. He dreamed of mountains, but they were not the jagged, treacherous peaks of waking challenges. These were gentle, rolling mountains, their slopes covered in soft, gray-green moss and their contours inviting, not intimidating. He was climbing, his sea-goat form perfectly adapted to the terrain, his hooves finding purchase with an instinctual, unerring certainty. Each step was not a struggle, but a steady, sure placement, a testament to the muscle memory of countless prior ascents. There was no frantic rush, no fear of falling, only the profound, rhythmic satisfaction of upward motion. The path was clear, the footing was solid, and every step forward was a quiet, internal victory, a direct reward for the hard work and planning that had come before. This was the disciplined dream, a world where effort and reward were in perfect, harmonious balance, where the climb itself was the destination, and every disciplined step was its own peaceful fulfillment. He slept not with the abandon of one escaping reality, but with the focused determination of one engaging with it on a deeper level. His breathing was slow and deep, each inhale drawing in the cool, thin air of his dream mountains, each exhale a measured release of spent energy. In the meadow, his form was a study in concentrated repose, all the formidable power of his ambition channeled into the silent, productive theater of his subconscious. His dreams were not fanciful escapes, but active workshops where the blueprints of his waking life were stress-tested and refined. The satisfaction of a step well placed in his dream was as real to him as the satisfaction of a task completed in the sun. He slept the sleep of the architect, the builder, the climber, a deep, restorative slumber that did not pause his progress, but integrated it, symbolizing the profound truth that for a soul like his, the reward of hard work was not just found in wakefulness, but woven into the very fabric of rest. Capricorn, the ambitious sea-goat, slept with purpose, his disciplined dreams a silent, steady continuation of the ascent that was his life. The gentle, rhythmic sighs of the sleeping meadow were not a lullaby to Aquarius, but a static hum, a background noise against which the brilliant, chaotic symphony of his own mind played at a deafening volume. While the others had journeyed inward, seeking comfort, order, or passion, his consciousness had launched itself outward, into the vast, uncharted territories of the future. Sleep was a mundane biological necessity, a frustrating interruption to the thrilling, high-voltage current of inspiration that crackled through his every nerve. The moon was not a symbol of rest, but a colossal, pockmarked data disk in the sky, holding secrets of gravity and light that begged to be decoded. The stars were not distant suns, but a sprawling, interconnected network, a celestial blueprint for a reality not yet built. He felt not weary, but electrically alive, his mind a kaleidoscope of whirring gears, flashing schematics, and half-formed equations, all revolving around a single, intoxicating concept, the technology of dreams themselves. He sat cross-legged, not on a blanket, but on a smooth, flat stone that served as his workbench. Before him, he had laid out his tools, not for comfort or ritual, but for creation. A lump of soft, grey clay, cool and malleable, a stylus carved from a hawk's feather, a pot of ink mixed from crushed nightshade berries, and his own boundless curiosity. His fingers, long and nimble, dove into the clay without hesitation, kneading and shaping it with a frantic, yet precise, energy. He was not making a pot or a figurine, he was prototyping. The form that began to emerge from the grey mass was strange and beautiful, a device of flowing, organic lines that seemed to defy conventional physics. It was a helmet, perhaps, or a transmitter, designed not to block out the world, but to interface with the very fabric of the subconscious. His other hand snatched up the stylus, dipping it into the dark ink. On a large, pale leaf he had smoothed for the purpose, he began to sketch. The lines were not hesitant, but flowed from his hand in a torrent, a visual representation of the storm in his mind. He drew intricate circuit patterns that mimicked the neural pathways of the brain, but with elegant, impossible loops and spirals. He sketched out a chamber where dreamers could share and combine their sleeping experiences, a collaborative canvas of the collective unconscious. He diagrammed a device that could capture the ephemeral wisps of a fading dream and translate them into light and sound, preserving them upon waking. His unconventional nature was on full display. There was no box to think outside of, because for Aquarius, the very concept of a box was an amusing, primitive construct to be deconstructed and rebuilt into something more interesting. His entire being was a conduit for this forward-thinking energy. He was not trying to quiet the storm, he was trying to harness it, to build a lightning rod that could channel this brilliant, sleepless inspiration into a tangible, world-altering invention. The peace of the night was not his goal, progress was. The gentle descent into slumber that the others embraced was, to him, surrender to the limitations of the present. Aquarius was already living in tomorrow, and in the vibrant, restless landscape of his mind, sleep was not a destination, but a frontier to be explored, mapped, and ultimately revolutionized. The frantic energy of invention, having reached its peak in the sketching of impossible blueprints, now needed a new, more refined channel. The storm of ideas had been mapped. Now it was time to test the first prototype. Aquarius set aside the ink-stained leaf, and the strange, clay helmet, his mind pivoting with the fluid logic of a quantum leap. From a pocket sewn into his tunic of shifting, iridescent fabric, he produced his most polished creation to date. A small, crystalline tablet that glowed with a soft, internal light. This was his dream journal app, an invention that did not merely record thoughts, but analyzed their frequency, cross-referenced them with biometric data, and sought patterns in the chaotic soup of pre-sleep consciousness. It was not a passive diary, but an active collaborator in his nightly exploration of the mind's frontier. He activated the device, and its surface shimmered, awaiting his input. His long fingers, still smudged with clay and ink, began to trace shapes and symbols on the cool, smooth surface. He did not write words, but input raw data streams of feeling and abstract concept. A swirling spiral for the lingering excitement of his new idea. A sharp, angular zigzag for the faint frustration of his own wakefulness. A soft, pulsing circle for the distant, comforting hum of the sleeping meadow. The tablet glowed in response, its light shifting from blue to a gentle violet, processing his inputs and displaying gentle, abstract visualizations in return. A visual echo of his own mental state, designed to help him observe his thoughts from a new, more detached perspective. As he engaged with the device, he initiated the other, more sensory elements of his ritual. From a glass beaker warmed by a cunningly designed pocket of captured sunlight, he poured a steaming, herbal blend into a cup shaped like a Möbius strip. The tea was his own concoction, a quirky mix of chamomile for its traditional calming properties, peppermint for mental clarity, and a pinch of a rare, silvery moss that was said to enhance lucid dreaming. The scent was bizarre but intriguing, a blend of cool mint, floral honey, and something that smelled distinctly of ozone and wet stone. He took a slow, experimental sip, the complex flavors unfolding on his tongue, a taste that was as unconventional and forward-thinking as he was. Simultaneously, he placed a single, smooth river stone against his temple. It was not just a stone, but a speaker, emitting a low, ambient soundscape he had composed himself. A layered tapestry of electronic hums, the recorded sound of deep space radio waves, and the gentle, slowed-down heartbeat of the earth. This was not music to soothe, but sound to stimulate a different kind of calm, a technologically induced state of relaxed awareness. The ritual was a perfect, synergistic blend of innovation and relaxation. The app engaged his racing mind, giving its chaos a structured outlet. The quirky tea introduced a physiological calm, and the ambient sounds created an auditory environment that felt both futuristic and deeply peaceful. He was not fighting his insomnia with traditional methods. He was partnering with it, using his own inventions to transform restless energy into a focused, almost meditative state of readiness for the creative work he was sure his dreams would hold. The crystalline tablet's glow softened from violet to a deep, pulsating indigo, its final visualization a slow, swirling galaxy of his own pre-sleep thoughts, now beautifully mapped and pacified. The last sip of the ozone and mint tea had warmed its way to his core, and the ambient hum of the Riverstone speaker seemed to merge with the natural rhythm of the night. The frantic, electric buzz of invention that had crackled through Aquarius had been masterfully channeled. His restlessness had not been silenced, but integrated, transformed from a barrier to sleep into a bridge toward it. The innovative ritual was complete. He powered down the tablet, the light winking out, and set it aside. The world of wires and wavelengths receded, and the simple, profound reality of the moonlit meadow returned to the forefront of his awareness. A deep, unexpected yawn stretched his jaw, not of boredom, but of a mind finally, peacefully, out of ideas for the waking world. He lay back, his head resting not on a pillow, but on the cool, smooth surface of his prototyping stone, its solid reality a comforting anchor. As his eyelids grew heavy, the dreamscape did not arrive as a gentle drift, but as a spectacular, silent explosion of light and form. He was suddenly soaring, not on wings, but on a current of pure imagination, over a city the likes of which no waking eye had ever seen. It was a metropolis woven from clouds, its architecture a breathtaking fusion of the organic and the engineered. Towers of cumulus, structured yet soft, spiraled into a sky of liquid gold. Bridges of iridescent mist connected districts of shimmering stratus, and boulevards of condensed light pulsed with a gentle, internal rhythm. This was the future he had been sketching, rendered in the vivid, unrestrained palette of his subconscious. Here innovation was not cold and metallic, but alive and breathing. Peace was not the absence of noise, but the harmony of impossible, beautiful systems working in flawless, silent concert. His sleep was the antithesis of the disciplined, purposeful slumber of Capricorn or the nurturing rest of Cancer. It was a creative freefall, an unrestrained dive into the boundless reservoir of his own imagination. There were no goals to achieve, no problems to solve, only a vast, exhilarating playground of what-ifs and why-nots. He drifted through libraries where books were living crystals that sang their stories, through parks where the trees generated light and the flowers bloomed with shifting, holographic patterns. He conversed with beings of pure energy and walked through walls of thought. His unconventional mind, so often racing ahead of the present, was finally in its element, exploring realms where the only limit was the scope of its own brilliant, boundless curiosity. He was not dreaming of a better world. He was swimming in the raw, unformed potential of all possible worlds. In the meadow, his physical form was a study in creative repose. His breathing was light and irregular, catching sometimes on the edge of a silent, dream-born discovery before settling back into a soft rhythm. There were no deep, rhythmic snores, only the occasional, almost inaudible whisper of a sigh, the ghost of a thought escaping into the night. He slept the sleep of the visionary, the inventor, the stargazer, a sleep that was not an end to consciousness, but its most liberated and imaginative state. Aquarius, the water-bearer, the innovative insomniac, had not been conquered by sleep. He had instead seduced it, luring it into a collaboration more wonderful than any of his waking designs. Drifting through his cloud-made cities and light-forged landscapes, he surrendered completely to the creative and unrestrained realms of his own genius, his spirit soaring, utterly free, in the vast, welcoming sky of his dreams. The veil between the worlds was always thinnest for Pisces, a delicate, shimmering film that the slightest sigh could ripple, the softest dream could tear. While her companions journeyed toward sleep through rituals of will and purpose, she had never truly left its shores. As the last, electric hum of Aquarius's imagination faded into the general quiet, Pisces simply floated, her form half in the moon-drenched meadow, half in the gentle, lapping tides of another, softer reality. Her large, luminous eyes, the color of deep ocean trenches where sunlight became a memory, were not focused on the stars above, but looked through them, as if the sky were a transparent scrim and a more beautiful, feeling universe lay just beyond. She did not prepare for sleep. She deepened her immersion in it, her spirit a feather caught on the cusp of a waking dream. A gentle, sympathetic sigh escaped her lips, a sound not of her own making, but an echo of the meadow's collective exhalation. She felt the shift in the air as Capricorn's disciplined mind finally surrendered its grip, the release of tension, a tangible coolness against her skin. She sensed the final, satisfied hum from Virgo's perfectly ordered space, a vibration of harmony that settled in her own chest like a resolved chord. Her compassion was not an action, but a state of being, a boundless, porous empathy that allowed the emotional weather of every other sign to flow into her, to be felt and understood. The fiery determination of Aries was a warm current. The grounded comfort of Taurus was a soft, heavy pressure. The dual curiosity of Gemini was a playful, tickling swirl. She did not merely observe their rest. She participated in it, her own consciousness, a calm, deep sea into which all their individual streams emptied and became one. Her imagination was not a tool for invention or escape, but the very lens through which she perceived existence. The rustle of the leaves was not just a sound, but the whispered gossip of the trees. The flicker of the fireflies was a Morse code of joy from the heart of the night. The moon's glow was not reflected light, but a liquid, silver empathy pouring down to soothe the world. She was connected to it all, the sleeping bull, the dreaming lion, the quiet crab, the distant stars, by invisible silken threads of feeling. Whimsy was her native tongue, and in this liminal space between wakefulness and sleep, she was its most fluent speaker. She already felt the pull of the deeper dream, the undertow of a greater ocean calling her home. There was no struggle, no ritual to perform. For Pisces, the dreamy drift was not a journey to be undertaken, but a current to be embraced, a gentle, inevitable flow back into the vast, compassionate heart of the night itself. The boundary between her waking empathy and the coming dream had dissolved so completely that her body began to move with the rhythms of the unseen sea. Lying upon her bed of soft, damp moss, Pisces did not simply rest, she swam. Her slender arms lifted from her sides, carving slow, graceful arcs through the moonlit air, her fingers trailing like fronds of kelp in a gentle current. Her legs stirred with a fluid, undulating motion, the faintest kick of a tail that existed only in the ocean of her spirit. She was practicing the ancient, instinctual dance of her kind, a series of gentle swimming motions that were not exercise, but a prayer, a physical invocation of the waves she could feel calling to her from just beyond the veil. With each slow, sweeping stroke, she imagined the cool, buoyant embrace of salt water, the weightless drift through sun-dappled depths, the silent, peaceful pressure of the abyss. Her bed was no longer a patch of earth, but a raft of seafoam, and the sighing wind was the breath of the tide, urging her onward, deeper. After a time, the swimming motions stilled, and she rose to a sitting position, her movements as seamless as a wave folding back into itself. From a conch shell that served as her cup, she poured a steaming, pale pink tea. It was an infusion of rose hips and hibiscus, a floral blend whose scent was the very essence of a secret garden blooming at the bottom of the sea. She cradled the warm shell in her hands, the heat a comforting anchor in the cool night, and took a small, savoring sip. The tea tasted of petals and peace, a delicate, slightly tart sweetness that seemed to dissolve the last remnants of her solid form, turning her to liquid and light. As she drank, a sound rose from her throat, unbidden and effortless. It was a hum, a soft, wordless melody that seemed to have no beginning and no end. It was not a song she had learned, but one she had overheard, a fragment of a lullaby whispered by a mermaid in a dream from a week ago, or perhaps a melody carried on a current from a future slumber yet to come. The tune was fluid and intuitive, rising and falling like the tide, a gentle auditory manifestation of her deep, soul-level connection to the unseen world. Her entire ritual was an act of intuitive flow, a surrender to the currents of feeling and imagination that were her truest guides. There was no checklist, no strategic plan, no focused intention. There was only the gentle swimming that merged her body with the dream ocean, the floral tea that merged her senses with its hidden gardens, and the hummed melody that merged her spirit with its timeless music. Each element promoted a deeper connection, not to a single idea or goal, but to the vast, interconnected web of existence itself. She felt the threads that tied her to the sleeping Aries, the dreaming Taurus, the quiet Scorpio, and she sent pulses of gentle, empathetic energy back along them, a silent, loving blessing for their journeys. She was a conduit, a place where the waking world and the dream world could meet and mingle, and her ritual was simply the act of holding that space open, of being the door through which peace could flow in both directions. The tea was finished, the melody faded to a final, sighing note, and the swimming motions had stilled into a perfect, floating repose. Pisces was ready, the dreamy drift was complete, and the ocean of sleep was waiting to welcome its most fluid child home. There was no moment of surrender, for there was nothing to surrender to. For Pisces, the transition was not a crossing, but a deepening, a gentle exhale that merged seamlessly with the inhalation of the dream. The warmth of the floral tea still bloomed in her chest. The ghost of her hummed melody still vibrated in the air around her, and the memory of swimming motions lingered in her relaxed limbs. As her heavy-lidded eyes drifted shut, the last shimmering filament tethering her to the waking world simply dissolved. She did not fall asleep. She drifted, her consciousness softening at the edges like watercolor on wet paper, bleeding effortlessly into the vast, waiting canvas of the night. The moon-drenched meadow and the starry sky above melted into a swirling, silver-blue haze, and she was floating, truly floating now, in the boundless, compassionate ocean of dreams. Her dream self, no longer confined to a single form, became a diffuse, radiant presence, a current of pure empathy flowing through the sleeping minds of the meadow. She did not dream of places, but of souls. She flowed into Ares's cloud parade, not as an observer, but as the very wind that billowed his dream sails, lending her gentle momentum to his peaceful expedition. She swirled into Taurus's lush meadow, becoming the soft, misting rain that kissed his back, amplifying his profound sensory comfort. She became a second, harmonizing whisper in Gemini's dream library, a silent, understanding audience that deepened their shared wonder. Her compassion was endless, a bottomless well from which she drew to soothe, to comfort, to unite. She was the gentle hand that straightened Leo's dream crown when it tilted, the warm light that filled the corners of Cancer's dream home, the balanced silence that deepened Libra's harmonious world. She dove into the obsidian caves of Scorpio's subconscious, not as an intruder, but as a cool, clear current that cleansed and refreshed his creative depths. She was the favorable wind in Sagittarius's celestial ship, the steady ground beneath Capricorn's climbing hooves, the inspiring spark that danced at the edges of Aquarius's cloud cities. In sleep, her greatest trait, her boundless, selfless empathy, found its ultimate expression. She was the dream weaver, the unseen nurturer of the zodiac's collective slumber, her own identity dissolving into the beautiful, peaceful dreams of others. Back in the meadow, her physical form was the picture of this perfect unity. She lay utterly still, her breathing so soft and shallow it was almost imperceptible, a mere shimmer on the surface of a still pond. There was no snore, no sigh, only a profound, radiating quiet. The moonlight seemed to love her most of all, pooling in the delicate curves of her form until she seemed to glow with a soft, internal luminescence. She was not merely asleep, she was becoming one with the night itself. Her spirit had expanded beyond the confines of herself, merging with the silver light, the whispering grass, the sleeping breaths of her 11 companions. She was the empathy in the air, the peace in the silence, the dream in the darkness. Pisces, the final sign, the boundless fish, had completed the circle. Her drift was over. She had not gone to sleep. She had become sleep, her endless compassion now a permanent, gentle tide washing through the zodiac meadow, uniting them all in a single, dreaming, peaceful heart. A profound and absolute stillness had descended upon the zodiac meadow, a silence so complete it was not an absence of sound, but a presence of its own. It was the deep, resonant quiet of a world holding its breath, of a clock whose ticking had finally ceased. The final, shimmering thread of Pisces' consciousness had woven itself into the tapestry of dreams, and with it, the last flicker of wakefulness in the clearing was extinguished. All 12 signs were now asleep, their individual journeys complete, their spirits embarked on the great, shared voyage of the night. They lay scattered across the soft, moon-washed moss like fallen constellations, each a unique configuration of form and energy, yet now part of a single, slumbering galaxy. Their dreams, once private landscapes, now began to seep from the edges of their minds, intertwining in the shared space above them, a silent, luminous aurora of collective imagination. The air, once stirred by whispered rituals and shifting postures, was now moved only by the gentle symphony of their repose. It was not a melody one could hum, but a rich, textured composition of breath and peace. From Aries' pillow fort came the soft, rhythmic drumbeat of his snore, a steady, grounding percussion. Taurus answered with his deep, purring rumble, a bass note of pure contentment that vibrated through the very soil. Gemini's synchronized breathing provided a soft, whispering duet, while Cancer's gentle sighs were the delicate lacework of a violin's tremolo. Leo's regal, resonant snore was a brass fanfare played at a distance. Virgo's precise, even breaths were the measured notes of a metronome, and Libra's serene exhalations were a chord held in perfect, sustained harmony. Scorpio's silent depth was the rest in the music, a potent pause, while Sagittarius's wind-like sigh was a soaring woodwind melody. Capricorn's disciplined rhythm was a steady, climbing scale. Aquarius's irregular, whispering breaths were the glitchy, beautiful sounds of a futuristic synth, and Pisces' near silence was the hallowed resonance of the concert hall itself. Together, their sounds wove a living lullaby, a nocturnal opus that was the very sound of unity and serenity. High above, the moon, their constant and silent guardian, watched over it all. It had witnessed the fiery struggle of Aries, the sensual comfort of Taurus, the curious chatter of Gemini, the nurturing rounds of Cancer, the royal performance of Leo, the meticulous order of Virgo, the quest for balance of Libra, the deep dive of Scorpio, the adventurous spirit of Sagittarius, the disciplined climb of Capricorn, the innovative insomnia of Aquarius, and the dreamy drift of Pisces. Now it beamed down upon their collective peace, its silver light a gentle, approving benediction. It illuminated the rise and fall of 12 chests, the relaxed curve of 12 forms, the peaceful expressions on 12 sleeping faces. It painted their fur, their shells, their scales, and their skin in shades of platinum and pearl, erasing the distinctions of day and rendering them equal in the democracy of dreams. The night deepened around them, wrapping the meadow in a velvet embrace. The stars wheeled slowly on their ancient tracks, and the world turned, but in this sacred clearing, time seemed to stand still. The individual fires of their spirits, the ram's boldness, the lion's pride, the archer's restlessness, were all banked now, their light turned inward to illuminate the vast, mysterious continents of their dreams. Yet in their shared slumber, a new collective light was born. It was the soft, combined glow of 12 hearts beating in the same quiet rhythm, of 12 minds exploring their separate worlds within the same safe haven. They were a circle, now complete and unbroken. The great slumber was upon them, a deep and healing peace that emphasized not their differences, but their beautiful, essential unity, a celestial family, safe, serene, and dreaming together under the watchful eye of the moon. In the silent, moon-drenched heart of the zodiac meadow, a final, beautiful alchemy was taking place. The 12 individual streams of dream, once flowing in separate, secret channels, now swelled and spilled their banks, merging into a single, luminous river. Above the sleeping forms of the signs, their subconscious minds wove a tapestry of breathtaking complexity and harmony, a living mosaic where every thread of imagination, every color of emotion, intertwined to reveal their profound and beautiful interconnectedness. It was a vision not seen with waking eyes, but felt with the soul, a celestial dance of unity performed in the theater of the night. In this shared dreamscape, Aries did not lead a charge, but a gentle parade. His ram's form, no longer tense with restless energy, moved with a peaceful purpose at the head of a procession that included them all. He guided them not over battlefields, but through valleys of whispering, silver grass, his bold beginning transformed into a serene journey. Following close behind, Taurus presided over a magnificent feast laid out on a table of moss and moonlight. There were honeyed fruits and warm, crusty bread, and he encouraged everyone to indulge, his love for sensory pleasure becoming a gift shared by the entire celestial family. Beside him, Gemini held court, their two voices weaving not arguments, but a single, captivating story that spun tales of star whispers and ocean sighs, enchanting the dream assembly and uniting all listeners in a common thread of wonder. Cancer moved through the dream gathering not with worry, but with a deep, contented nurturing, her presence a soft, glowing light that seemed to mend invisible tears and soothe unspoken fears. Under her care, every sign felt perfectly safe and cherished, and on a throne that was not of gold, but of intertwined roots and blooming night flowers, Leo reigned peacefully. He did not command attention, but simply presided, his regal presence a calm, warm sun around which the peaceful kingdom of their collective dream gently orbited. Ensuring the dream's beautiful logic, Virgo organized the flow of it all, her meticulous mind arranging the details of the feast and the parade with an effortless grace that brought order to the whimsy, proving that structure and magic were not opposites, but partners. At the dream's center, Libra danced, her form the living embodiment of the scales she bore. With every movement, she wove balance into the very air, ensuring that laughter was met with thoughtful silence, that movement was balanced with rest, that every element of their united dream existed in perfect, beautiful equilibrium. From the edges of the vision, Scorpio explored, his intense gaze now filled with a quiet awe as he discovered secret grottos and hidden pools within their shared mind. His deep dive revealing not personal mysteries, but wonders to be appreciated by all. And always, on the horizon, Sagittarius journeyed, his arches form a silhouette against a dream sunset, forever pointing the way toward new, gentle horizons, reminding them that even in unity, the call of gentle adventure remained. Capricorn stood upon a small, gracefully ascending hill within the dream, not climbing with strain, but simply standing at its achieved summit, his disciplined dream fulfilled in the quiet satisfaction of a goal reached in harmony with others. Nearby, Aquarius's innovations bloomed like silent fireworks, trees that hummed soft melodies, fountains that poured liquid starlight, his forward-thinking spirit adding a layer of beautiful, impossible magic to the collective reality. And flowing through it all, connecting every scene and every soul, was Pisces. She was the very empathy in the dream air, the gentle current that carried Aries' parade, the soft rain that nourished Taurus's feast, the understanding that deepened Gemini's story. Her boundless compassion was the invisible glue, the deep, feeling ocean in which all their separate dreams now swam together. The vision shimmered, holding for one perfect, eternal moment, a testament to the truth that their strengths did not clash, but complemented, that their differences were not divisions, but the essential notes in a single, magnificent chord. Then, as softly as it had formed, the tapestry began to fade, its colors bleeding back into the individual minds from which they had come, leaving behind not a memory, but a feeling, a deep, resonant knowledge of their unbreakable bond. The story ends here, in the hushed peace of the fully united zodiac meadow. This is the gentle magic of sleep, the silent, nightly journey that reminds every heart, waking or dreaming, of its place in a vast, interconnected whole. Under the watchful moon and the blanket of a billion stars, the 12 signs rest, their spirits woven together in the quiet loom of the night. Let their unity be a final, soothing thought. Let the rhythm of their collective breath be a lullaby. Feel the serenity of the meadow, the peace of the stars, the deep, knowing silence of dreams intertwined. Close your eyes now and be carried into your own peaceful slumber, cradled by the same night that holds them all, safe, serene,